regular meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for roll call, welcome everyone. Jessica Johnson. Here. Eric Gordy.
Here.
Beth Praska. Here. Kevin Campbell.
Here.
Kevin's here.
Brady Anderson.
Here.
Amy Edwards. Here. We have a quorum.
Yeah, this is good.
We don't use Kevin's.
Bring it all the way to the end.
Is that better?
Way better. It's that.
Is that one? Yeah. All right. Great. Well, welcome everyone. The board is here and we have a quorum. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Superintendent Duran, I think you had a request to move a couple things.
There's a couple of things we'd just like to shift around. When we get to the principals' reports, we'd like to have Principal Nyhus and the students that are here to speak to the board. And then we'd like to move to the Director of Teaching and Learning. And during the time the Teaching and Learning Director gives his presentation, he will also take care of the QComp information for the board, which is F under section, where is it?
6.
Section 6.
Yeah. And then after the Director of Teaching and Learning, we would ask the board to have principal from our middle school, and then the principal from the high school, and then our principal on special assignment. So just a little bit of modification so we can get somebody on the road quickly here.
Would we want to also move up the policy 620R?
Yes. I think the other three could speak to it, the other two could speak to it, but sure, we can move that. That's the credit for learning.
All right. So we'll do, so the request is to update the agenda, and in section 6A, we would start with Principal Nyhus, and then we would take a pause from the principal's report, insert in the Director of Teaching and Learning report in totality, which is 6F. And then subsequently, we would move up section 8A, which is the final reading of policy 620R, credit for learning. And then we would move on to the rest of the principal's update and the agenda as written. So we have that as a request for just an order modification. Content
So
is the same.
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda with modification.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion or comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Next, we'll move on to our recognition. Superintendent Duran.
We have a number of students to be recognized tonight, and first of all, I'd like to start off with Reams writer, Quiana Larson, who took and wrote a heartfelt song about her brother. She featured this song for him on Fabulous Friday on May 31st. She'll be singing this, so congratulations to this student for sharing her talents. Rockford Middle School Center for Environmental Studies, we have two of our middle school students that were selected for the All-State Band. Chase Evans is a 7th grader, and Joseph Harkis is an 8th grader. One is a tuba player and one is a bassoon player, and I'd like to just congratulate these two wonderful musicians on representing our school. Next, Rockford High School DECA, and there's a number of students that went and represented us in Orlando for the DECA Nationals. Jessie Seymour, Kaylee DeWolf, and Molly Noonan. And I'd like to congratulate them for their professionalism and representing Rockford High School with pride. And then 2019 Track Activities Department would like to recognize the Rocket Track program. Rocket track program took the Ray County Conference by bringing home both the men's and the women's championships. Chad Robrand and his coaching staff have brought out the very best in our athletes. Multiple individual champions were awarded, but most importantly, 2 prestigious team championships. Congratulations, 2019 Rockford track team. Those are the recognitions for tonight.
Thank you. Next agenda item is public comment. At this time, I will read a statement. Public comment at each regular school board meeting is an opportunity for residents of the Rockford Area School District to address the school board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. To ensure that all individuals have a chance to speak, speakers will be limited to 1 3-minute presentation. The public comment portion of the regular school board meeting is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear comments from community members. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student matters, even without naming the student, in open session. This includes the public comment portion of a school board meeting. The board respects and values input on student matters, but when it relates to a specific student or to a specific student matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Do I have any public comments that have been submitted? All right, no public comment. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our consent. Do I have a motion for our consent agenda items?
I'll make the motion we approve the items listed in the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comment or discussion? With no further comment, I will ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent agenda passes. Our next agenda item is Principal Nyhus and the elementary update.
Hopefully we don't squeal.
Well, good evening, everybody. Lots and lots of activities and events happening at Reams in May, and the end of June here. We are down to our last 12 days, and you wouldn't know it. I said I put my winter clothes back on today. It's crazy, but that is not why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to highlight a couple of our students and one of our teachers who really work hard every year to learn about the stock market game. I was sharing with a couple of the parents before the meeting. Every Monday morning is Call My Mom morning on the way to school, and I've got 40 minutes on the road, and that is our standing appointment no matter what. And she always asks me, do you have a long day today? And I said, well, we have a board meeting tonight, and I was explaining that we have some amazing kids coming to discuss the stock market game and how they really work and learn how to play the stock market. And she's like, I wouldn't have a clue how to do that. I said, me either, but my 4th graders know how to do that, and that's really cool. That's really cool. So Kevin Neff is one of our teachers who works with students, and this is through our Best Prep work. And so he has 2 students here with him tonight, Grant Usher and Ada Karanda, and they are going to discuss the stock market game and what they've been up to this year. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Do you want me over here by the microphone or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, before I get started all the way here, if I can, we do have a couple slides, so before I go and blind anyone here. Let's see if it's. All right. Dan, I have to go get a new slide. Would you just move over there and hit the space bar when I need to? You can stay here, but I'll just let you know, okay? Okay. So we have one who's not here tonight. That would be Sophie. She's at a guitar lesson. They couldn't reschedule. Grant's right here, and Ada, maybe you come up just a little bit more. Their team name that they picked was the Nerds. So the first thing they have to do in the stock market game is they do have to come up with a team name. And one of the rules the stock market game has is you can never do a 2-to-1 vote for anything. So you have to discuss it and come out with a unanimous decision, whatever it's going to be. So they came up with the Nerds. And before I turn over and let them have some questions, I just want to give a shout out to Best Prep. This is a group that has been around. It's a local group for the Twin Cities. And Grant, maybe go to the next slide there. They have quite a few offerings. They do tech training for teachers in the summer that I've gone to. That's very good. So that's the Summer Institute. And this year there was a grant from Charles Schwab. And that was how we were able to pay to have 2 different teams from my math classes. So both my math classes had teams. So we had 10 teams in each of 3 students. And we went from January through early May. This team here, the nerds, out of 226 teams in the grade 4 through 6, they took 16th. And that's statewide. And there's 1,169 teams 4 through 12. And you guys took 148 out of the state. So that's about 800 middle school and high school teams that they surpassed. So. All right, let's go one more slide there, Grant, okay? Now, right here is our list of our teams. They have quite a few names, everywhere from the Cheeseburgers in Paradise team, to the Onagons, to the Billionaire Bros, and this is what they could see each week or each day for how their standings were and how much money they had earned at that point in time. And what I'd like to do is, why don't you go to your regular screen here, and then I'm going to let you guys do a little bit of talking. So, okay? So this is the screen they work out of. It's not something you call an elementary type screen. So this is the same type of screen that the high school people would work with. And they started investing at the very end of January, and we went through the first week of May. So that time they had $100,000 to work with in their investments, and their return that they got over that, just over 3 months, was just over $9,000 in profit. So they had to work with a lot of 4th grade skills, because every time you buy or sell, you had to pay for a commission. You had to do the math. You had to figure out how many shares, how much money you had to be able to buy the shares. You had to read a lot of analyst reports. So going for you guys first, why don't you go one more slide, and we'll see what stocks that they've purchased. This is what they had for their portfolio at the end of the year. So Ada, Grant, how did you choose some of those stocks, and which ones why did you like them? You can both just stand right there and talk.
We decided by looking at the reports that everyone put in on Yahoo Finance. So we looked for how high the prices were and if they were going up or going down. And we also looked at what people rated them as. And when they said strong buy, then we usually decided to buy those.
And that chart up there, I hope it's picking up on Mike, but that chart up there, you can see the line where they bought Disney stock back at the end of March. And then you can see what happened to the Disney stock they bought. That was one of the stocks that they made a good time for their purchase. So how did you guys decide on Disney at that time?
Well, I guess so I was watching news on about stock, and and there's a lot of reports on Disney stocks, so I was like, why not buy it? And I guess we turned out and it did a lot of money for us.
So on the time of that stock, Disney took way off. Do you know what caused that Disney stock to go up at that point?
There was going to be a new park opening.
The Star Wars?
Yeah. And on the news, they also said there was going to be Disney TV, a new app. So it went up with that too.
And my question for you is, if you're looking at the analyst report right now, did you still buy Disney right now?
No, probably not. If you look up there by 135 and 4 cents, it would do pretty bad for you because it is negative, and and it doesn't. We tried that with United Healthcare, and it didn't really work.
So,
It did pretty bad.
yeah. And just before the contest ended, your team decided to sell your Coke stock that had gone up quite a bit. Why did you decide to sell that at that point?
We sold it because like it was doing really good, and we really didn't want to risk it going down even at the end of it.
And I'm going to start with probably Ada first, then Grant, and then our final question from me is, what did you enjoy most about doing the stock market game, or what did you learn the most while doing it?
I liked that it was just fun researching everything together. So.
Okay. And Grant?
I mostly just like it because of the research, and I guess it was mostly because I like looking at that kind of stuff.
So, and every time they make a purchase, it's all real time with what the stock's actually doing. So, if someone bought it at one point during the class and someone bought it at a different time in the class, the stock price would actually be different for each time that someone bought that. So, I'm going to say thank you, and then I don't know if anyone has anything else to ask them. Or...
I just want to say great job. Like, nice job, you guys.
Do you think you'll buy stocks when you get older?
I will anyway. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Did Mr. Neff keep asking you for stocks that he should buy?
No.
You should have.
That's right.
Now, making $9,000 in 3 months is a pretty good return.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, really good job.
Nice job.
All right, thank you.
Buy Apple stocks.
I just want to say thank you to our two students and to Mr. Neff. Never underestimate the power of a child and what they know and what they can do. Anybody who needs financial advice will have their phone numbers afterwards. So thank you very much, you guys.
Good job.
Thank you.
And then, of course, you're welcome to stay for the board meeting, and you're welcome to go. It's up to you. So we didn't want you to feel like you had to stay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item. Kevin.
Thank you for accommodating me tonight here.
Absolutely.
I'll start with the Director of Teaching and Learning report. The MCA testing is completed. We do have preliminary numbers in. I can't share those. Those are embargoed numbers, but I can give you some updates in certain areas preliminarily. Reading, we had 877 students test in reading, 795 students in math, 390 students in 390 science students take the MCA test. MTAS, we had 15 students take the reading, 14 take the math, 6 students took the science MTAS test. We did have a scheduled MDE audit done while taking the MTAS at Reams, and we haven't heard anything back, which is good. So until we get anything back, that was scheduled. That was not a surprise visit. I knew that one was coming. MCA testing feedback sessions have begun to inform that continuous improvement cycle as we kind of move through. Just a little update on summer PLC training is happening in Minneapolis. Right now I've got Brenda and I are attending along with 4 staff members in Minneapolis. We've got Best Prep, that's the same group that Mr. Neff was just talking about. We're sending 2 staff members to that training, and there's a lot of smaller individual trainings happening throughout the summer from all 3 buildings. Summer school update, we've got July 8th through August 1st at Reams. Maple Hill is July 22nd through August 15th, and we have hired our summer school staff, and I think that's been reported to the district office at this time, but Holly Bjorn, Becky Miller, Tamara Dean, Laura Ryman, and Alex Probst will be working with us at Reams. Maple Hill will be Marty Johnson, Paula Trandall, and Ann Costi. And we've got some substitutes in line also, so that's all lined up. We're just, kids are starting to filter in, and we'll have some more updates with numbers regarding summer school in the near future. Any questions?
Any questions on this update?
All right. Let's talk QComp. So QComp, I believe the union voted today, 71-0 to accept the next proposal. So we're here tonight to get some approval, so I can pass on some reports to the state of Minnesota. Some of the proposed changes for next year, I can kind of highlight that for you real quick.
So is this, just from an agenda perspective, is this the annual report that you're in right now?
This is the annual report.
Perfect.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
then the next
we-
agenda is plan changes.
Okay.
Yep. I think there's two. There we go. Perfect.
All right, so the annual
Thank you.
report. And it looks like there is an action item here. Let's see here. Approval of this report is needed for MDE requirements here. All right, so the report comes from the A-team, the advisor team, from Kathy, Jan, and Amanda Rentz. A couple of highlights here. The impact of the PLC leaders. They talked about implementing the portfolio process to ensure members had documentation that supported their PLC work throughout the year. I know they're continuing to work on that portfolio process for next year and a continuous improvement cycle as we kind of move this forward. If you look down at the, I'm looking down at the bottom of my page. I guess I don't know exactly where you're at here, but we're focusing work and discussions on attaining greater student achievement with that, with this particular process. A lot of provided positive instructional coaching and mentors for academic behaviors in the classroom related to observation coaches. We'll talk a little bit about observations when we talk about updates in just a minute here. By the way, there's a little change in the plan for next year. I'm looking at the job embedded professional development. There's a quote here. It says, one group reported, we're always practicing strategies and sharing experiences, assessing their own work, which all lead to better student achievement. And that's an important piece of what the reflective practice of the PLCs provide for our students here. So I would recommend for approval of this as written.
And we had a conversation, it's up to the board, it's listed as a briefing action. It's listed as a briefing action, and that'd be up to you. If you decided that you wanted to act on it tonight, you can, or if you want to wait until the next meeting, you could act on it at the next meeting, but this does need to be referred to the state and submitted. So I don't know what the deadline is for that.
It's pretty quick, June 15th.
So we could do it either.
No. So it needs to be done tonight.
This one would need to be tonight, the other ones don't, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion then that we approve the report as written.
Second that motion.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Motion passes to accept the QComp report as written, so that it can meet deadline to report to the state. Next agenda item within your agenda section is the QComp proposed plan changes.
Yeah, there's not a lot of plan changes, but there's two pretty significant pieces that we should look at real quick. The plan stays basically the same. The one update that I would point out there was an additional group added, which adds an additional expense of $1,125. That's just has to do with shifting of those PLC groups. The other piece here is an increased adjustment of $3,800 to allow teachers to observe other teachers on their prep time if they so choose. Twice a year. We talked about it at the core committee. It had a lot of backing, and I would back that change also. I think that's a good piece that we can put in. It's hard to get out and see other teachers teach, and sometimes you kind of want to pick who you want to go see, and if you happen to have a prep time, that's a good way to go about seeing others in their practice. So it's my recommendation that you do approve those changes also as written.
Any questions on this one?
Is there a timing issue on this one as well?
Is there a timing issue on those changes as well? I think it's the same, isn't it?
Same thing.
Yeah, I think they all are kind of on the same kind of timeline.
So Kevin, at our work session, we talked about the possible changes to the Q-Comp model to address some of the learning and instructional strategies at each level. Does that?
That wouldn't actually be a change to the Q-Comp model. That's actually a change in how the PLCs function. So in terms of the model itself, the model's not changing. What's changing is how we actually look at the PLC portion, which Q-Comp supports. It's a little different.
So we'll see those changes eventually then as well?
You would see that, not necessarily as a part of Q-Comp, but that's a piece of PLCs, which is a little different. I understand where you're going with this. The question is Q-Comp the same thing as PLCs?
No.
And the answer is no. So what you'll see is a change in the structure of PLCs, but what Q-Comp does is it allows for greater teacher pay based on some of the good practices that should be pulled out of those PLCs.
And the additional $5,000 comes from?
It's already in the budget. There's no additional monies that are in there.
That doesn't come from us.
Any other questions? All right, I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one to accept the plan changes, to approve the program update form as presented.
I'll make the motion again based on timing, right? We have to make a decision this meeting, so I'll make a motion that we accept the plan as written. Yeah, that's enough.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would just like to
Yep, go ahead.
thank our Q-Comp leaders, Kathy Madsen, Jan Hendrickson, and Amanda Rassett for the work that they have done this year. Especially thanks to Jan. I know she's going to rotate off, and she's worked very, very hard and done a great job representing the middle school and been a great team player. So thanks, Jan, for all your hard work. And to the other two, Amanda's preoccupied being a mom. And but thanks to her, and thank you, Kathy, for your leadership.
The last thing that they need to kind of have is that they've got the PLC calendar. It's required for tracking PLC minutes. One change that has to be made due to some workshop week scheduling would simply be the first meeting is going to switch from 8:29 to 8:30 because of press training of all things. Imagine that. Hey, press training that's coming in on August 29th that we just are in the process of scheduling, but that's the date that they can come in. So the only change that I would see on that calendar is to move that PLC 180 minutes to that Friday 8:30. And in terms of tracking, that I don't know that the calendar itself needs to be approved. Does the calendar itself need to be approved as far as you know? You just need it for tracking purposes? Okay. And so, but I'm going to ask that we did ask for as an action item, and just to approve the calendar as stated. It's basically, it's Thursdays when they meet, and that's going to stay the same, so.
Go ahead. Just a question. If we approve it, if they have to make any changes, does it have to go back through? Or, I mean, since there's no approval required, do we? I'm just asking, just to make sure that we're not.
You could make a motion that stated in it that there's flexibility with the team to be able to adjust the calendar if needed.
I just wanted to make sure that we're not tied to something else when
Yeah,
someone
I
comes
was a
back.
little concerned about that too. That's why I wanted to make that change
We're
before.
like,
It was the one piece that I could see, so I appreciate that.
The best efforts always.
No?
The best efforts and plans can always be changed by a snow day or something.
Right, absolutely.
Great, any further discussion or questions for Kevin? So they have asked for action on this. I entertain a motion.
We're gonna do it this time.
I'll make the motion to approve the calendar with the added flexibility to the team. If they so need to change any of the dates necessary, that can be decided upon by the team.
We have a motion. First, do I have a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Great. And I echo, I think that's all your, we have one more.
And there's the budget.
Yes.
And they're with the exception, the changes in the budget were already mentioned. It had to do with that extra team and the additional observation time. Otherwise, everything is covered with the current Q-Comp budget. So I'd ask that be approved also.
Great, and that is not actually listed as an action item for the budget.
It looks like Q-Comp, calendar, and budget. Oh, it's on there as one action item.
So you already voted on it? No.
Calendar on this one.
Calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like it's already approved, huh?
It doesn't say anything about
Doesn't have an
budget.
action.
It doesn't have an
Doesn't
action
have-
item.
okay. And I'll make sure we figure out if that needs to be approved on or not. There were some pieces of Q-Comp that did and some that didn't, so. All right.
Do you want to vote on it just in case you need it?
Probably, because it has to be turned in at the same time.
Okay.
And with this, again, there can be changes, obviously, that would be made.
Well, I think if you make changes to the budget, I'd like to be notified. You know,
Sure.
I think we need to know what's happening with the
We
budget.
still don't know the piece coming out of the legislature
Right.
yet. I mean, we know
Yeah.
what they're talking to and to, but they haven't actually passed the bills.
Yes,
So
they're
Q-Comp will be a part of that. So you can pass it as preliminary, and then if there's changes, bring it back.
Exactly.
Any further discussion on that? Motion then?
So I'll make a motion to accept the preliminary budget for the 1920 calendar for Q-Comp, or budget for Q-Comp, sorry.
All right. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, preliminary budget approved.
All right, thank you.
Great. And then I think we were going to go on to 8A,
Yep.
which is the final reading of policy 620R, credit for learning.
Matthew, you want to start? 620.
Are we ready right now?
Yep.
Yes.
So what I did do prior to this coming back is I did talk with each. I talked with our counselor, our interim principal, our principal on special assignment, and Kevin. There was agreement, all four of them agreed that the language was what they wanted to bring forth to the board. Now, we didn't have that level of agreement last time, so I wanted to make sure that they had the time to do that.
Okay, so check, is this on? Check, okay. So what we were asking for is one adjustment to policy 620R. I guess it's part A, section 4, under weighted grades. And what is in red and struck through essentially is the cessation or the stopping of weighting the AOPS grades. AOPS, we can talk a long time about the history of AOPS, about the context. We have felt at the high school we have consensus from the leadership team that Superintendent Duran just mentioned, that we feel this is the way to go. So I don't know what else you would like me to share. I can.
Any questions?
So, and I know we've talked about this one a number of times, but so the way that it's written here, wouldn't it negatively impact somebody that's currently in AOPS by not allowing them to earn the extra credit?
That's a great question. One of the main aspects of this move is equity. Right now, AOPS allows students that have really joined the AOPS track in middle school. That's not open to everyone. And then when you get to the high school, you are accessing weighted grades that no one else can access.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about valedictorian and those sorts of things, it puts it on an uneven path. So what we have worked out, we've worked this out with the middle school staff, with our mathematics staff, with our counseling department. There is an off-ramp. And so essentially each student will have access to a weighted grade, the Rockford High School weighted grade. Did that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Sure.
Does this affect any students that are currently in it at our high school, like the 9th, 10th, 11th graders currently in the next year, they're getting weighted this year, next year they will not be? I just want to be clear on this so that if we are asked, why did you vote this or whatever, I just want to be clear that
To be crystal clear,
to know
yes,
what
it
I'm
will
answering.
Incoming 9th graders, and then 10th, 11th, and 12th, anyone that's in AOPS, they can take the class, it just won't be weighted.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I've heard from folks, take a 360-degree view on this. Everyone has valid points.
Absolutely.
We're just looking at what we can support at the high school. And I don't know if you saw in the news that school district in Ohio that took away Val and Sal just because of the mental health and how students were pushing themselves just to take as many advanced classes as possible. We want to really support our kids, and we do have weighted math classes here that we provide at Rockford High School, and that's what we're looking at here.
I really appreciate all the effort you guys put into this after our long discussion at our work session.
Yes.
And just thankful that you guys put so much thought into this, that this isn't a decision that was made lightly, that you did work very, very hard to come to consensus. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to the team.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. So this is an action item. I would take a motion if so inclined.
I'll make the motion to approve policy 620R as written with the corrections or the revisions.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? No further discussion, so all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it passes.
Thank you very
again.
much.
I echo the thoughts. I know the whole team put a lot of thought into thinking this through, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I should make note that this is dealing with weighted grades as it applies to the AOPS program, but they will be revisiting weighted grades as it applies to the rest of the high school course offerings. As we roll into the International Baccalaureate program, there'll be some need for extra work there, and I think Kevin has talked about setting up a subcommittee or a task force off of the curriculum committee to just look at grading at the high school level.
Thank you for making that adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, thank you. All right. Next up is our middle school principals report.
I thought it was me, but it wasn't. 100%.
Oh, it's you. It's you.
The love letter about it.
Well, I want to thank you for changing the order because I did not want to follow those beautiful and wickedly smart elementary children. Sister and F. That was amazing. So I have a couple of important dates coming up for you. We have a concert that's coming up this week Thursday, and this week Thursday. And then we have our spring concert that's a little bit later in June that you can see, so if you can attend those, they're going to be amazing shows. The information that I'm here to present to you tonight, we talked last board meeting about transitioning kids briefly, and so I thought I would give you the rundown on what we're doing as well as an idea that's been percolating in my head. I have a few notes for you. So we start off with probably our most sensitive population, our special education population. We have meetings in which the parents come in with their child, the current case manager, the new case manager that they will have at the middle school, a speech teacher if that is required or appropriate if they're getting speech minutes, the principal, and we all talk about what it's going to be like at the middle school. And so you have a child that's very wide-eyed and is the food is good and do we get recess, and they have their priorities, and the parents who are quite nervous, and especially if it's their oldest child, and what's that going to look like. And so we've done about 3 rounds of that, and that's amazing. And then those students come back for a very small group tour of the building, just really trying to build their comfort and their familiarity with the building. And they get Linnea Frederickson, who's one of our amazing special education teachers, will do a presentation just talking about what it takes to be a middle school kid and what our current middle school kids have for advice for these kids. And and it's important. They see me a lot, and they see all the teachers, and they get to see those rooms. And then the 4th grade comes over in total, and so they get a tour, and our amazing web leaders give them a tour, and probably a little bit more inside scoop than we'd care to hear about sometimes, but we prepare them in advance, and we're going to talk about the individual strengths and weaknesses of every teacher in the building as you walk by their door, but talk about the good things at the middle school and show them where things are, and they'll bring kids into my office, and so that's a fun time as well. Our counselor goes over to visit, introduce herself, again, the visibility. The big choice in classes for 4th graders is, what music class are you going to take? Are you going to be a band kid, choir kid? We're still trying to figure out how to do both at the middle school. Are you going to do general music? And if you're going to be in band, what instrument? Well, I really want to play the baritone, but my mom says the flute's cheaper, so there's a lot of those conversations. And then, so the music teacher goes and talks about each music class and shows all the instruments, and the kids get to try it out, because not everyone has the anatomy to play every instrument. I did not know that prior to becoming a principal. I played the trombone for 2 days at once, but it didn't work out for me. So these kids are well beyond what I'm doing for them. So the large tour, we talk about, they get a tour, we talk about that. They get a little bit of time with me talking about, in terms of from the principal, what it takes to be a middle school kid. What I keep coming back to, though, is the scared parents at the table. And what are we doing for those scared parents? And so they, have 4th graders who are feeling kind of king of the hill and very confident, and then worry all summer long. And so, and I've talked with our superintendent, obviously Mr. Durand, about this, and what I would like to do is to start a parents' night for parents of current 4th graders, so they can come in and just have some time, set something more intimate up in the media center where it can just be me giving an informal, hey, this is what it means to be in middle school, this is what the schedule looks like. We're not going to make kids do combination locks for 2 weeks until we practice. They're just going to take everything to their first class. And you know what, the 8th graders are going to stay down there, don't worry about it, and they're only going to have lunch with 5th graders, and I promise we're going to take good care of them, and to do something like that. And we talked about, do we make that an opportunity to bring the web leaders back and to have kids do like a scavenger hunt? And at this time, I think I really just want it to be about parents. And I want to do it early in the summer because I want them to have the tools to help their anxiety, because it is real. And that's something that I never realized until I had a child of my own a couple years ago. I adopted him, remember, so it's not like, you're like, 2 years ago you came here, whatever. And to know that firsthand, to that, what is he doing right now, and is someone taking care of him, and who is that person, and to really, build some relationships with people. I've already talked to somebody who's going to be available to interpret, because I think that's going to be a big barrier for a lot of these families. And so I'm looking at possibly, FMX is pretty sparse the night of the 25th of June. And so I'm kind of looking at that to be able to, before the end of the school year is over, get some information out to 4th grade parents and to kind of earmark that, and we'll see how it goes. So there you have it. That's my idea. Questions for me?
What's the picture?
The picture is, we had a group of students go to Envirothon, and it is a competition in which there's an awful lot of teams from Hopkins, and our students beat several of those teams. I'm a competitive person. Have you picked up on that yet? And so it's really nice to be able to take our kids and have competitions about, environmental types of topics and have them compete at high levels. And so this is a group of girls who made their own Envirothon t-shirts. And one of them says happy little tree, and one of them, this is my dirt shirt, and so they have all these cute little handmade t-shirts, so I thought that had to go in there this time.
It's awesome.
I believe so.
Bobby, I know that it's not on your agenda, but could you just take 30 seconds and update on the career fair?
Oh, the career fair, yes. So we had, and I didn't get to see, but a quick walkthrough because we had sneak peeks with parents, and so I was kind of tied down with that, but we had lots of local vendors come in, lots of local businesses. The assistant district attorney was there. The group that we're working with closely, 25 and 2 from from downtown Rockford. Lots of different experiences for kids they went through. They had the kids were very well prepared to ask questions. The vendors that were there got to choose students who came and had the best preparation, the best questions formulated, and the students are just, they show up and they dress up, and you walk in the front door and there's the FFA kids in their beautiful jackets greeting people and escorting and helping all the people who are coming carry their stuff down, and it's just an amazing time for them. And it really, I don't think it's too early to get kids thinking about what is it that you want to do, right? And so thank you for bringing that up. That was it was a great day, and I know our staff works very hard for that. It puts our 8th grade staff in a specialized schedule in the morning so they can still get their classes in and still provide that time in the afternoon for kids to just be able to, think about STEM-related careers. And most of them are. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. So.
I happened to walk up on a group of 8 girls, and they were talking with a woman engineer. And I said, girls can't be engineers, can they? I thought they would respond. They did. Very aggressively. I was just kidding them. And I thought, this has changed in the last 10 years. Girls are very much seeing themselves as able to be anything they want to be, and that's really exciting. It's a good change.
Especially in technical fields, math and science.
Just on that point, and since we'll stay right on task, I went to a TED Talk in Blaine this last week, and it was a person she was a student, does really well in technology, or in that field, and she said, I went to a class or an engineer, and I went to it was women in engineering, and I realized there were no boys there. And she talked about how we sometimes think that's a great idea, but instead, if it was a woman engineer that came in and spoke to the entire group, because we're all engineers. And just the shift in mindset from another student to go, it's really it's not a gender thing, it's about engineering.
Right.
So,
You probably shouldn't get me started on that. My dissertation was about women in leadership and trying to look at mentoring as a way to get, because it's still a very, unequal field, and this is another issue. Saying that, so it's amazing to be able to give our kids this opportunity and every single day, right? You want to go down and build things in Makerspace, go build things in Makerspace. It doesn't matter. If you're good at math, if you struggle with math, go build things and get that drive and get that passion and have that experience. And because you don't know when they're in middle school. I mean, something might fire in them 10 years down the road that starts with connects in the media center, the middle school.
You mentioned firing in kids. This is kind of odd, but it was really cool. One of our students is really into coding and coded the 3D digital printer to make the Cathedral of Notre Dame. So he made this the week before the fire, and this is just this really intricate, well done. I mean, it looks exactly like this.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
that's cool.
It's impressive. Yeah, and the 3D printer is our new baby that came from the Ed Foundation, and they're using it well. So we just keep building that makerspace and living the dream with that, so it's good stuff.
That's awesome.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item, principal's report. Rhonda.
High school.
Big kids.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that we do a similar transition program from the middle school to the high school, and we're in the process of doing that right now. And we've had several rounds where the parents will come, similar format, in terms of the parents visiting and bringing the student, meeting the special ed teacher here, as well as a couple of gen ed teachers, and then I know the kids are going to come back for a tour a little bit later. So, similar transition process.
Do you want me to turn it on?
Yeah, please. So I'm here tonight this is an informational item. And what I wanted to do is provide information regarding an intervention that we piloted this year, or the second semester, that we're going to likely planning for.
It's just warming up.
Using next year. So we have two teams that look at student data. We have an RTI team, which is Response to Interventions. It's a team that helps identify strategies that can help students who are struggling. And when I say struggling, that could be academically, that could be social, emotional. And then we have what we call an I team. An I team is usually takes referrals from the RTI team. And the I team is usually the counselor and the nurse. It's things that, it's when the RTI team has not, students have not been successful with regular interventions, and so we begin to think maybe there's something else, like if there's an attendance problem, and we've worked with a student and a family, then maybe it will go to the I team. Many students who have mental health issues will be forwarded to the I team because those are sometimes things that classroom teachers don't necessarily have the tools, nor do we want them to be providing that type of support for our students. So anyhow, we piloted what we called a 180 study hall class. And it's 180 because it's a course that's already in our in our registration guide. And what we did is we looked at the end of semester one, so mid-January, we looked at our student, we looked at grades. We looked at students who were struggling academically. And what we identified, and I'm just going to show this to you, and I hope, and it's in little bitty font because it's student names there. But if you notice, there's red. And the students, let me go like this real quick. The students in red, and I'm going to say it softly, were failing 3 or more classes. The students in yellow were failing, had D's and F's in 3 or more classes. And so the question was, what are we going to do? Like, what's our plan? We know these kids, especially our 9th graders, they're failing almost half their class. Like, what's our plan? So we talked about it, the RTI team talked about it, and the discussion came up about this 180 structured study hall, and we said, well, we have to do something, so let's look at doing that. So we pulled this 180 curriculum out of the cobwebs, if you will, and identified a couple of teachers that had very few students in a section. We had a couple of classes that we were running, and just due to movement in the schedule, we were going to run this class with less than 10 students in it. And so we were able to identify 3 teachers, 3 sections that we were able to collapse and move kids elsewhere and target these students. So we did that, and we started with 23 students, and this would have been mid-January then, and then every 3 weeks we did grade checks. And then we ended with, I think it's 39 students, but you can go on to the next, just scroll down a little bit. Now, we pulled a lot of data, and I'm not going to go through all the data, but this graph kind of summarizes everything. So we started, and when I say start, mid-January, with 23 students, the red students here. We started with our red. And then as you can see, as the course of the semester has played out, we've increased it to 34 students. But during that time, even though we've increased the number of students who are receiving the intervention, we have been able to help our students recover those classes, stay off the DF list. You can see some data trends on the side there. 42% of the students that were in the 180 class improved their overall performance. 18 students went from 3 failing classes to passing all of their classes. And then 24 students went from passing 3 classes to failing only 1 or 2. So because of that success, and we were here, and these are kids that we targeted. So this is what we call a Tier 2 intervention. There's Tier 1, which are interventions that we provide all students. Tier 2 is interventions that are targeted, and then Tier 3 is just that intense intervention. And that may be students that we end up having to maybe refer for an IEP eval. But this was a Tier 2 intervention, so they were targeted. What we found...
I got a question
Yes,
about the data. It seems a little bit counterintuitive that the percent is going up and the grades are improving. So like, how does the identification of enrollment in the program work? Is it like every few weeks you look and identify people?
It is.
And then once you're in it through the rest of the semester? Is that
Correct.
why the numbers, the improvement in grades, but the rise in numbers of participants? I'm just trying to understand.
That is correct. There's a lot of data. I mean, we pulled the grades every 3 weeks. It also encourages our gen ed teachers to make sure they're updating the portal. So there was a side benefit, if you will. But we pulled the data every week. We monitored the students that were in there, and then we saw if there were any other students that were bubbling up. And if they ended up being one of our red students, then we ended up putting them in also.
Sure. Thank you.
But yeah, the data is pretty rich. So targeted intervention, but what we found was that there's other kids who were asking to be in this 180 class. It's not that they were failing classes necessarily, but they were 3 sport athletes, they're in band and choir, or they're taking 4 or 5 advanced classes. They just needed that time during the school day to have a quiet place to study. And so we took that and decided to expand this as a Tier 1 intervention next year and offer it to students. And so we reopened the registration, must have been end of February, 1st of March, and we had about 80 kids pick this as an intervention. Or I shouldn't say an intervention, but to pick this as a course during the school day. So next year, we're hoping then to, we'll build the schedule with those sections. And for the students for all students, no, it's a pass-fail credit. So students aren't losing or getting behind in credits. It's a pass-fail credit. For students who are choosing to be in it, they will have, similar to what honors hours is right now, where they have, I'm going to say privileges, to go to the media center and, go out and visit other teachers and those sorts of things. But students who are placed in there, like they are this year, they will have a structured study hall where they are in the classroom. There are weekly grade checks, there's weekly reflections, cell phones have to be holstered. There's a few guidelines to be in the class. But we're real hopeful that it's going to continue, we're going to continue to see the success that we did this year. And again, it's going to be, for next year, it'll be a Tier 1 and a Tier 2 intervention. So students can choose to be in it, or they're going to be placed in it. Yes, sir.
How long is the class and how often does it meet?
It meets every day. It's an elective.
So it's an hour course.
So it's a 50-minute class, correct.
And is there, you mentioned a little bit of structure, so some reflection. Is there, is that like I'm working on a math assignment, I don't understand, is there instruction during that time, or how does that work?
There's not direct instruction in terms of delivering curriculum, if you will. But I know on Mondays, you could answer that, Kathy. Kathy's on our RTI team. On Mondays, they do a goal-setting sheet. Now, because this is Tier 2, on Mondays, they do a goal-setting sheet. On Wednesday, the teacher actually works with the student, and they go into the student portal and look at any missing assignments to make sure the student is continuing to do what they need to do. And then at the end of the week, they do a reflection every Friday. And that will continue on next year for the targeted students. For students who are choosing to be in the 1A, or we're calling it a guided study hall. For students who are choosing to be in the guided study hall, their requirement when they're in the room is just to help maintain that quiet environment. That's our commitment for the study hall, is that it will be a quiet study space.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you say that you're targeting for tier 2, I'm kind of synthesizing what you're saying. It's more based on helping them get work completion than it is targeting specific skill deficits. It's more looking at, what I'm hearing is to help them get things completed, not so much helping them with any kind of skill deficit.
Well, it's both. It's helping with missing assignments. Right now, we have 2 math teachers who are actually our guided study hall teachers, and so a lot of what they do is math during the day, because a lot of students need support in math. So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
But really, it's a place for students to come in, get that support. I mean, there's some kids that just need that somebody to keep leaning on them. They just, when they get home and there's so many distractions, they're just,
So you had mentioned that you look at grades mid-January. Is this
It was at the end of the semester.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, so this is a second semester program. Is there any thoughts to looking at a previous year's grades and starting it in first semester, carrying it through the year, or is this purely for second semester?
No. So we started it right now, second
Gotcha.
semester with these students. And because of the success, what we saw in terms of success, we now are moving forward with offering it next semester. And students next semester could pick it for one semester and or both semester. So if it's a fall soccer player who has 3 or 4 advanced classes, they may choose to just take it first semester and then take a different elective second semester.
I met with the guidance staff and the administrative staff at the high school to talk about how could we adjust the schedule for next year so that it could actually make some inroads on and adjusting to what kids' needs are, instead of just moving ahead with our curriculum and what we feel is important. There are some pieces that are being missed by the kids, and so the guidance office and Rhonda put together I would say pretty unique way to address some of the transition into the IB program, but also how to address some of the needs of kids. So that's where we could bring this 180 all throughout the day, both semesters, because of the staffing.
So I just reflect back on I would say like study hall or homeroom or whatever, and going from a targeted where you have to go in there because of certain grades, and now having it as an opportunity for people that are taking some high level courses to have a rest. Do you see that being a unique thing in that class at all, where some are very academic achievers and motivated that way and taking it because of that, and others are going, I have to be in here because I've placed? Does that fit in the room well together?
Well, we're going to find out. No, we've actually given that much consideration. One of the things that we will do in the fall is the parent, the student, the teacher will sign a little contract, and we're finishing up the final edits on that contract. But it's just basically they're agreeing that this is a quiet study hall, that they're agreeing to come in and sit down and maintain the quiet study hall, that they're going to do their work, that they're going to holster their phone. And we've talked about just that, and we're taking the position that we cannot allow the study hall environment to be compromised. We're not going to allow that to happen. So if there's a student who is just not willing to participate, then we're going to pull them out, because we're not going to allow them to compromise the environment for anyone else. So there's quite, Matthew, can you scroll down a little bit? And I don't want to go through all this stuff. But like I said, every 3 weeks, if you want to just look at the data trends on the side there.
So is that, This is, so the FTE for this is taken out of their teaching time, not supervision, correct?
Correct.
So does this then fall on that teacher then to be doing these grade checks?
Correct.
I mean, the professional obligation, I mean, instead of teaching my math or English or science class, now I'm doing a study hall.
Correct. And so what we shared with teachers is that it's not another prep, but they need to be actively engaged in the class.
And
Again,
obviously
it's not
planning
another
prior-
prep.
And obviously planning prior to these kids coming in.
Well, it's, the planning is just making sure that they're actively engaged with every student. And when we have our RTI meetings, it's that teacher who really knows the student better than anybody. I mean, most of the time when teachers come to an RTI meeting now, they can only talk about their one siloed class, whether it's math, science, English, or social. The study hall, next year, if a student is in a structured study hall, that structured study hall teacher will be able to come to the RTI meetings and share how the student is doing in math and science. They're struggling, and you notice attendance. The student just doesn't get here first thing in the morning. That's why they're failing that class. But to really have a holistic view of how the student is doing academically. And again, one of the outcomes that we didn't even anticipate was the need for all of our classroom teachers to make sure they're updating Infinite Campus in a timely manner, which we should be doing. Any other questions?
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned, I can't put my mic, you had mentioned honors hour. How does this replace that concept in the high school? Will that still, how does this all relate to that?
So it does replace honors hour. That is our intent. And again, we can look at this in the fall, but it is our intent to replace honors hour. And we've had a few honors hour students this year who have not been using their honor hour time very effectively.
Fair enough.
Period.
Fair enough.
So again, it really helps hold our kids accountable. Even our honor hours kids who, they're great kids, they're strong academically, but you give them a free hour and they don't always use the time like they should. And so this is an opportunity for the kids, because we could reel them back in. If a student, even an honors hour student, if their grades start struggling, especially seniors, we'll pull them back in, and you need to be back in the structured environment.
Thank you. And just for the board, I know Jessica and Kevin will probably remember this from last year, but when we actually did have a conversation about honors hour and how that was maybe a little bit tough, because there's kids that would benefit from some guided time and some study time, and because they're, to your point, involved in multiple different activities, but they might not be in honors classes and all of those things, and they want to succeed equally. And so this concept gives all kids that opportunity to catch their breath if they need to, and if that's what works for them. And so for me, it's nice to see the evolution of that, trying a tier 2, seeing how it works, seeing what makes sense, thinking about some of the positive and some of the learning from the honors hour concept, and then kind of blending it all together so all kids, should they so choose, and some by invitation, have the opportunity to catch their breath. I just say thank you for that.
Doing the math in my head right now, 7-period day, correct?
Yes.
If a child had full schedules all 4 years, they would be well beyond their credit requirements.
Yes.
And the inclusion of this, which hasn't happened except for honor hour, won't put anyone at risk, I would believe, correct?
No, it won't put anybody at risk credit-wise. But remember, it's a pass-fail credit. And so students will receive a pass-fail grade. So it doesn't affect GPA. It's pass-fail.
Straight elective.
Straight elective.
And you've also hit an area for systemic use of this and to enable all students to have that extra time. That's really quite a problem for many systems in MTSS, so kudos to you for looking at what you have to reach those students within your system that works, because I know that's quite an area of need in many schools that I work with, so good
Thanks.
job.
I work with a great team, counselor, RTI team, I team, I have a great team.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I love the idea of piloting programs to support our students to achieve better academically and then seeing how that works and then scaling it. So this is awesome. Super awesome. Love that we're reaching out to support these students and ensure they get across that finish line, and we continue to maintain an extremely high graduation rate. So really proud of that work that you guys are doing. So thank you for that. It's awesome.
Again,
Awesome.
it takes a team.
Yes.
Totally, yeah. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No. Yeah.
Thank you. Great update. All right, next is our principal on special assignment IB report. Matthew.
Good evening again. So a couple things. I kept the same format, the same structure for this report. Wanted to provide an update on the candidacy. I believe I shared it last time, our degree program and our career program applications have been accepted. We are official candidate schools through IBO.org. We are still awaiting word on MYP. We're hoping to hear that any day now, so just wanted to apprise you on that. Professional development, we now have 95% of our teachers designated for training by the end of this summer. And the two teachers that are not going to train this summer will train next fall, just because of their, for some folks, they're doing AVID training this summer. They've got multiple things going on. So our goal is to get everyone trained, 100% trained by next November. And we're really excited about that. We had some people come back in our last Wednesday IB workshop. The folks that went to Tampa St. Pete shared out, and one teacher said, I knew more than just about everyone else in my group, and there were people that have been in IB schools for 3 or 4 years, had not gone to training yet. So we've really prioritized getting our people to training, and then as much as possible having them go in groups, that those serendipitous conversations, the interdisciplinary conversations have just been fantastic. So I'm really excited every time a group comes back. We do a debrief meeting with the IB coordinator and that group, and then they also share out at our Wednesday IB workshop. And we've also added a layer. We have a pre-meeting before each IB workshop. So our next one on the docket is 8 teachers going to Atlanta, Georgia in early June. One of our teachers that has already gone on training will attend that pre-meeting. So it's kind of a bridge, and it's really, really a great way to share that knowledge, to transmit that knowledge. And I want to share one more idea. It's ingenious. Our teachers actually created a Google Doc at the Tampa training so they could, in real time, keep track of their perceptions, their questions. I hit the wall at 2:18, all those things. So then when they're at dinner debriefing, they could pull up the Google Doc and remember exactly what they had processed. I thought that was a great idea. So that's a little professional development. Yes, sir.
Just a question on that. If, say over the summer and the high school needs to hire new staff, some new staff coming in the fall, is there an on-ramp process to the professional development of IB? I mean, as you're looking at the calendar, can we get people trained in IB pretty quickly?
That's one thing. There are opportunities abound, and we wouldn't be able to do it on year 1 of the fiscal for the grant, and it's a little different than what our school year fiscal goes from July 1st to June 30th. Our grant lags a little bit. It goes from October 1st to September 30th. So we actually will have a little time to play with. We've set our professional development budget right at the target with a little bit of leeway should there be additional ground transportation costs. So we don't have necessarily enough resources to, let's say a teacher leaves now that we weren't anticipating. However, by October 1st, we're in year 2 of the fiscal, and the next round, there are resources set aside in year 2 of the grant, and it's a 5-year grant.
Okay.
Another thing that's come up just as far as professional development is concerned, we'll sit down with our teachers at the beginning of next year, because what we're finding is our teachers are going to have to wear multiple hats. You could be an MYP teacher for 9th and 10th grade, and you could also be a diploma program teacher, 11th and 12th grade. So those are things that we will work out and meet with each teacher individually to create their PD plan. Number 3, communication and feedback opportunities. I just want to highlight, we had one this morning, an IB listening session. We had 8 or 9 folks participate. That was a combination of teachers and parents. It wasn't the highest number of attendees, but it also lasted a long time. It went from 7 o'clock till 11 o'clock was when the last parent left. So very rich, very robust conversation, and we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of dimensions to communication, and that's what the last hour and a half really focused on. And we're excited about sharing information in as timely a manner as possible. We're excited about taking the message to people directly when that's face-to-face, when that's when someone can share that information. We want to expand the tent and have more than just the current IB coordinator sharing those messages. And as more and more people go to training, we'll have more and more people that can share those messages and share their learning. And I think one thing we all have to keep in mind is we don't have every answer right now. Superintendent Duran talked about it. There's no book out there that says here's every answer for how Rockford High School is going to implement this. I want to harken back to our last IB workshop. The word "we" from the teachers, we were talking about grading, we're talking about scope and sequence, and how collaborative it is. It's really, really exciting. I heard 4 or 5 teachers share out, and it was "we." Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do together. Whether it's unit writing this summer, whether it's at our next training, whether it's as a department, and creating pathways for students to achieve success. So that's very encouraging. Finally, point number 4, Northwest Suburban integration and MSAP grant coordination. 2 items I'd like to mention. Amy, you mentioned before the portal, and students that are currently in 8th grade. I've made calls to every single family, and those are some great conversations, but it's kind of, catch as catch can. Because people are busy. So every single person I've talked to, we've had a great conversation. Most folks are planning to come to matriculate to the high school. That's great. We also, this Wednesday, will have a site visit with Northwest Suburban leadership team. That's with our grant coordinator, that's with the federal grant coordinator, and we'll talk about our next steps.
One of the other things that's been done is connecting with Media Minefield. That's the group that had a specific plan for rolling out some communication on IB to our parents internally and some external potential students and so on. So we'll be meeting with them Friday morning, and hopefully we'll begin that process. The grant had set aside specific money for marketing and communicating on IB, so that's what we're moving forward on. They were the only of all the groups that were submitted. They were the only one that submitted one specifically for IB. Felt that they were a good group to go with.
Just a quick question. Do you feel like, because I know we got our grant a little bit late in the game because we were, awarded later than we thought, right? Do we feel like we will be able to spend down this year's grant dollars or do you think some of that will have to carry into next year? That was one of the conversations we had at Joint Powers Board this week, not about Rockford specifically, more about all of the grantee awards.
There is a 10% variance, and Sherry, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. We can be within 10%, but our goal is to be as close as possible to that number. And that's what we've worked We've had several IB administration meetings, and that's with head of our director of teaching and learning, our technology director, because these are all aspects that are addressed in the grant. That we're trying to use every single dollar judiciously.
Great.
And not spend just to spend, but really focus spending.
Yeah, and I think at Joint Powers Board too, and it'll be good when they come on site you said this week, Wednesday?
Yep, Wednesday.
They've been working with kind of the federal team, just in case, because of the awards going out a little bit later, knowing that some districts might not even meet that 10%, depending. Some might potentially be able to carry over. That's what they were working on.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, but I was just curious as to where we're at, and it sounds like, I mean, the training plan that you have, and I think that that's one of the beauties of this grant, is that we're investing so much in the professional development of our faculty, and being able to, send them places through the grant, so that's awesome.
Well, I really appreciate you mentioning that. That reminds me, we have to, I think, take stock. It is amazing work for all of our staff, all of our teachers, all of the folks that are on the IB Advisory Committee. We still have all the work that has to be done in the current school year, right? Principal Dean just shared the great work that they're using data to drive decision making. That's fantastic. And then on top of it, we're talking about a whole IB programming that could come in 3 different programs, NYP, DP, and CP. And that's a lot of work, and it's a lot to think about. So I really, really give our folks credit, and the really, I'll be honest with you, people just want to move. And right now we have about 25% of our teachers have been trained. So we haven't even been trained yet. So when that teacher shared, we already know more than some of these people that have been in IB schools, I think that's great, and it really speaks to the team of this high school and how they bought in and want to make this the best possible situation for the students that are already here and for the students that will be coming. It's important that we support every single student in this transition.
I think it was really important when we set the budget up that we were very, very careful in making sure it was realistic. And then when we had a chance to rework it, we pulled in a number of the team members to really look at it and just hone it down. So then I think we will make it within the 90% easily.
Great, thank you.
And we're waiting on the federal government. We've sent in our revisions, and we're just waiting for that final.
Great. Eric?
Paul, quick question, and I'm directed at you. Sorry, Matthew. As a board, you said scope and sequence, and I hope everyone understands what that means, but as a board, do we see the scope and sequence, the universal grading practices, as well as the standards associated?
You would be involved in that, since the timeline is awfully tight for implementing the IB. I think the 9th grade will be something that just has to be put into place without a lot of, they'll be more telling you this is what happened versus bringing it back and showing what's going to happen. As we move into 10th grade next year, there'll be more time in advance of it to say, here's what's going to happen and here's what it can look like. So it's kind of this has to be implemented pretty quickly, and I don't think there'd be enough time to be bringing it back to the board before it being implemented.
Sure, and a good understanding of the universal grading and the adaptation of the standards with those courses, I think would be a good, something eventually to talk to.
And that's the same problem that we have, challenge that we have at the middle school also. And so we talked about grading, and they've been putting a significant amount of time in on working on grading at the middle school. They're kind of the bridge between the standards-based grading at the elementary school and what's going to be starting to happen at the high school. And with any of that, it's kind of nice if you have others on either side of the change happening, so that the parents can feel comfortable coming out of the middle school and transitioning to the high school, and it's not something that's so unique and new. That's what that grading task force, I think, will be helpful to kind of ferret out what are those questions that people have, what are the concerns, and then making sure that we bring that to the board so that you guys have a chance to weigh in on it.
So bad question, I'll skip it. 8th grade grading going into universal or to standards aligned or standards-based grading as well, since we're going to do that at the high school, and right now it seems as the 8th graders, but that's a good conversation for a different day.
That's a question that I think the 7th and 8th grade staff will be working on, and we just want to make sure that as best we can, it'll be a seamless transition between 8th grade into 9th grade. And every time you make a change, there's the potential for people to be stressed out about it. So you want to make sure that you move slow enough so that you can answer people's questions, but quick enough so that you can actually get something accomplished.
And for the universal grading, next year is a gradual implementation. So our 9th and 10th grade core teachers, one thing that Principal Dean talked about was the guided study hall. On the other side of that, this is an unbelievable opportunity. Our 9th and 10th grade teachers are going to have time to create lessons, professional develop, create assessments, and our 9th and 10th grade core teachers, so that's math, science, social studies, and English, will be expected to deliver 2 MYP style units, 2 IB style units. And it won't replace traditional grading. It'll be, think of it as like a GIS map. It'll be another layer of feedback. So it really will give students a chance, and families, a gradual introduction to that grading, because that's probably the number one question I get is around grading and how that's going to be reported. And we just came back from Minneapolis Southwest High School, Fridley High School. They have their struggles too. And they were very candid with us. They're doing great things, and there are things that they have areas of growth, and they were very honest with us. So that helps us try to avoid some of the pitfalls that other schools have experienced.
I have one more question. You've had quite a few different conversations with community members. You had one, a small group but long group this morning. Are there any top of mind questions that you're hearing from community members about the IB implementation? Like maybe the top question? That would be, for me, great to hear, and then great to kind of hear your thoughts around the answer to whatever that question is, so that then as a board we can maybe be empowered to kind of know and hear and support support that main question or a couple main questions that you're hearing too. Does that make sense?
Get an FAQ.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an FAQ, but I know we're early, so, what's kind of been top of mind, and how can we support, I guess?
Yeah, I would say the grading one has been the number one topic, and folks specifically are saying colleges don't look at numbers, they look at grades. Well, they do look at numbers, they look at grade point average. But as far as standards-based grading, there are some districts around us that do have standards-based grading, that they report that, but most of them do convert, at least at the end of a term, and still have a GPA. What I've said to every parent, we're going to take the time to get this right. We are not going to, I could slap something together in an afternoon, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a great policy. We're going to collaborate, and this is what IB really, really requires, is that we have a collaborative process, multiple stakeholders, student input, parent input, community input, administration input. All those groups are going to have to, we're really going to have to roll up our sleeves and come to the best possible scenario, because IB does require a couple things around grading, but we don't want to take away opportunities from kids. We want to enhance and amplify their opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next agenda item is Activities Director Report. Dan,
All right.
come on up.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Okay. I gave you a pretty detailed list of things that kind of went through what happened this year. I just want to share some kind of exciting stuff along those same lines. Number one is the boys and girls track team. They both won the Wright County Conference this year, and the first time for the boys, second consecutive year for the girls. But here are the individual champions. In the 100-meter dash, sophomore Sarah Byers, 200-meter dash, freshman Kasia Katie, the 800-meter run, it's a little bit longer than a dash, freshman Natasha James, shot putters, sophomores Jaden Lark and senior Luke Overton, high jump junior Kelvin Sisk, and long jump senior Hawken Petron. Those are conference champions. Now here are the kids that set Wright County records at the conference championship. Pole vaulters, junior Elena Schroeder and senior Hawken Petron. 800-meter run, junior Leo Duffy. And the 4x4 relay,
with junior Molly Schultz, freshman Aaliyah Robrand, Natasha James, and Kylie Sowers. So they are conference champs, but also record holders. Pretty cool. Then following up last week, middle school won the Wright County Boys and Girls Track Championship as well. That's kind of amazing, yeah.
It's fun because there's a ton of kids in track, right? Right now I think it's your activity with the most students in it is track. And there was a class that came up with Cassia in a class that was really good out of middle school. And one of the exciting things, I was talking with Chad, and he said, I think the middle school team that we have now is the best we've ever had. So if we're winning records right now, that's just a really cool thing. And what I love about also just the approach on that is, he said, the idea with track is to help them better compete at life, right? Run the race. So if you're carrying a football, if you're playing a different sport, if you're just in life itself, and I thought that was really cool. So to see that success as a track team across the whole program, it's a pretty cool thing.
It's really neat to see, and to stop out there someday at practice and see the 100+ kids out there stretching and working together, and 6 coaches working with them. It's an amazing sight. So track has been very, very successful. We had something happen today that I can say I've never had happen in my career. We've already postponed the track meet tomorrow. It's not being run tomorrow. It's going to be either run Wednesday or Thursday. We're not sure which one, because it doesn't matter which day you pick. Someone's graduating, church is going on, so there's all kinds of issues. They're talking about starting it early on Wednesday so people can get back for graduation. But as you look outside in this beautiful day, you're like, we're already canceling it tomorrow. So I guess we have rain coming in. Today up at softball, we had the first section game. Girls softball team won 16-1 in 3.5 innings. The opening inning started off with Michaela Gronke hitting a 3-run home run, and then 4 batters later, Sarah Byers hit a 3-run home run. So a 6-0 lead going into the second inning. And then because of all the cancellations and things going on, I just want to let you know that the NHS induction ceremony is being moved from Wednesday to next Tuesday, the 28th.
Is that the awards as well?
No, just the induction. The awards is late enough at night, so if something, if something were to get changed, the kids would be back for that. So we just didn't know what was going on, if it was going to be Wednesday or Thursday with the track meet. There's just too many kids that would be a part of that, so we're moving that to Tuesday the 28th. Other than a crazy spring with weather, we actually were able to get every game in with the exception of one middle school baseball game. So I don't know how we did it. Well, I can tell you. Just for example, the softball team, they played every day last week. So I think they played 10 games in 7 days or 8 days. And it got crazy, but we're nearing the end. Any questions?
Dan, I want to make sure that you stay long enough for a later agenda item that the board's going to talk about clerical support for activities in office.
I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item, resolution to certify listing of graduates. Oh.
This is just a formality that the board authorizes us to move forward with the graduation. It says that students have met the criteria required by the Board of Education and met the graduation requirements. I think Amy has to sign diplomas. You got those done?
I did it.
And who else?
Done.
Jessica's done. So we're done signing diplomas, ready to award them. Yeah, all you have to do is approve this.
I don't know.
Let's keep them here. You're doing good in track.
Should we wait till next month?
Next month.
Next month.
Agenda.
Great.
You may not be happy with us.
Does anyone have any further questions? Otherwise, I would take a motion for the resolution.
I will make that motion to accept the resolution to certify a listing of graduates as stated.
Second.
Perfect. And because it's a resolution, this would be a roll call. Yes? All right. So Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Beth Preska.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. The resolution passes. Great. Next agenda item, so we're skipping on because we've already done item F to G, activity secretary position. Paul.
This is something that's been on the board agenda. We did set the financials out many months ago and said that if we're in a position where we can make that recommendation. If this is approved, this would mean a shuffle of some clerical support in the high school. We would have half of a secretary in the guidance office that would be supported out of the IB budget. Half would be out of the general fund. In the activities office, we would add half a position more to the activities office, and that would be addition of salary and benefits, approximately about $20,000 additional compensation for clerical support at the high school. Dan, I don't know if you could give any more details about how it has worked being half-time guidance, half-time activities with your clerical staff.
We would just stand here.
I come up to the mic.
Approach. I think it's been really tough as far as just the amount of work that person, Stacy Larson, has done and put in. She really is doing two jobs, and she works really, really hard. And from an athletic or an activity standpoint, you kind of got to triage. You just got to do what you got to do to make sure we're running the programs well, and so that in the community it looks like a well-run machine, but behind the scenes you're not able to do some of the stuff that pays off later on. So it's been tough, 2.5, 3 years of kind of doing that. So this would be obviously a nice early Christmas present, and I think we could do a lot more with the middle school. I'm an activities director 7-12. I really have a hard time getting to the middle school because of all the stuff that goes on at high school. I think this would lend that a little bit more flexibility for me.
I think one of the other things that if we get feedback, it's always on our website. And if there's anything that people look to, it's always the activities website. What if the information isn't current, if the information is inaccurate, there's always that question, why hasn't this been fixed? And I think we refer back and say, well, it's kind of something that the coaches have to help us with, but then who do they hand it off to? They all do it themselves to some degree, but when you start looking at scheduling of officials, when you start looking at paying all of the invoices and so on, clerical support is critical in order to make sure that is successfully done. So we're recommending this. I know Dan has asked for it probably for several years, and I think that it's the right timing for it. And the other thing is, then I think that probably Scott and Krista would be able to say this, there is the potential for some bumping within the ranks too if we take this position. So you hope that it'll be kind of an easy fill and it'll be kind of a smooth transition, but I don't know if there's anybody that's out in the system that would be interested in moving into the guidance office. If let's say Stacy's interested in going full-time over into the activities office, then that opens a position up that has to be filled in the guidance office. If Stacy wants to stay in the guidance office, then there's a position that you need to find somebody, or there may be somebody within the system that's interested in going into activities. But either way, there's that potential to have that. There's not an automatic, one person doesn't automatically have it. I mean, it may end up that way, but that is a part of the process.
So I think one of the things that you said, Paul, is that through the IB grant, again, the item on the table is the activity secretary position of a 0.5, but right now it's one person doing two separate things. So the idea, from what I understand, is that it would be the guidance counselor or the guidance secretary position would be half subsidized, so increasing their FTE to be full-time, but half of that additional wages would come from the grant. Is that correct? Am I hearing that right? I just think that's important
There
to
would
talk
be
through
two
as a team.
full-time people, one
Yep.
full-time person in the guidance office. They would have half the responsibilities would be for IB support, and then half would be straight guidance. The reason that it will take 4 years for the full IB program to be implemented within the school, and so those 5 years of support for clerical support. And what we envision is that there'll be increased student enrollment, and as you have increased student enrollment, you'll have increased need to support.
So is the 20K that you identified, that's from the general fund then, not from a grant or anything like that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I think the other thing that I want to point out is that originally, when I started here 9 years ago, it was an athletic director. It was an athletic director 9-12. Then we added in 7th through 8th, and now we've got 6th grade even with our track program, got students, so it's 6 through 12. And then we've added on top of it activities. And we didn't just have the band and choir, but now we've got robotics, and we've got trap shooting, and so there's a number of things that were not here before that need to have that level of support.
I'm very budget conscious, and I think this is a no-brainer. So if it's okay, can I make a motion?
I would entertain a motion.
So I would make a motion that we accept this and move forward with another half FTE in the activities department.
So
Before that, do I have
Need a second.
I need a second, and then we can do it.
Okay.
Then we can discuss.
Okay.
Robert's rules. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know them all, so.
That's fine. Yeah. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Now discussion. Great.
So we have two positions, it looks like, up for discussion, and I know we're discussing this one right now, and I know it's desperately needed, so I'll acknowledge that. And recognize Stacy for the amazing work that she's doing the work of two people. I want to go back to the discussion that we had at our work session, and specifically around academic achievement, press, and well, all the good things that we talked about there. One of the pieces of data that I looked at, and realign me if I'm getting off track here, because there's going to be a little bit of a stream of consciousness here, so
Okay.
apologize in
You did.
advance.
Go ahead. Keep going.
The reading proficiency levels going from 62.9% in 2016 to 58.4% in 2018, so over the course of 3 years. So to me, we've made some investments in administrative positions over, we've invested in the safety of our schools by adding a liaison program. I think that this is a critical position, but I think we have a bigger issue that we need to deal with a focused plan. I want to understand what the spending associated with coming up with a plan to reverse this trend in reading proficiency at the elementary level is before we go ahead and add administrative positions. I'm not against adding administrative positions at all. In fact, like I said, I think it's needed. But what I think we need to know first is, do we need more paras? Do we need an EL?
Do we need more kindergarten support? What is the level of support that we have so we don't get ourselves into a budget pinch later on when it comes time to make this decision? I just think that making the decision on this position and the district clerk position today before we talk about a plan to address that reading trend, I don't think, if it was more than, if it was one, if we went from 62 to 58 one year, then back up to 62, I'd be cool with that, right? But I want to see that trend start to reverse, and I want to see us investing our money in that student achievement there before we make a decision on these two positions. So that would be kind of what I would say. So there's my
I don't necessarily disagree. I would want to make sure that I'm very clear, as you point out. Adding clerical support or adding clerk support is not adding administration. We are understaffed administrative in this district for the amount of resources revenues that we have and the amount of responsibilities that are placed on this administrative team. We're understaffed. We're also understaffed in our clerical support for our programs. There's no advocacy group that's going to come out and be pro-clerk. You don't have a bunch of people coming to the microphone and saying, I'm a real fan of hiring clerks to keep track of the resources. We are charged with being fiscally responsible, just as the board is. So normally what happens is that we look at the staffing around clerical, and then we look at, and we will meet as an administrative team to look at staffing for our whole program. I was very impressed by the work that came into the discussion at the work session about press training. But I will tell you, I could bring in 10 other teachers that would be equally as passionate about their program. And we, as an administrative team, we're charged with trying to sort out and figure out which of those things will make the ability for us to move the needle. We all want to improve academic achievement. There's nobody in this district that doesn't want to do that. And I do understand that it is one of the ways to improve it is to do something in elementary. But we could also we could change staffing in EL, because that's a significant delta also. We could add EL language learning instructors. There are pieces of the puzzle that could be put into place, but that's what you charge the administrative team and the staff to be able to bring forth to you. And you had a piece of it, but you didn't have the whole. You didn't have the whole puzzle. It was just one piece. So all I would say is that we are bringing these forward because we believe these are responsible requests to the board, and the timing of it, and the timing for staffing of the rest of the staff, the teaching staff, and so on. That comes at the next meeting in June. That's always been that way. It's not like it's something that's unique and new. In fact, we are making this recommendation believing that it was on a 1% budget. Now you know that they came through with the legislature at a 2% budget. And so we froze the enrollment and we put the budget at 1%, and we're still making a recommendation because we believe it's fiscally responsible. If you want to talk about clerk, I'll be really, really specific on that. We don't have the redundancy in the district office. If somebody goes down, if somebody goes out ill, if somebody something happens to one person, we haven't cross-trained with people across the district. We don't have enough staff to do that. I sent you an example of 5 districts that are the same size and the same budgets as Rockford. They have 6 staff and 5 staff in the district office. We're sitting with 4 staff. So you will do what you do, but I'm making the recommendation because I think it's fiscally responsible in order to make sure that we meet your requests. You ask us for data all the time. There's only a couple people to go pull all that data, and those people are working pretty darn hard. So do I think that we need to have support? Yes, I do. Do I think we need to do something for academic achievement? Yes, I do. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I don't think just because you do one, it doesn't mean you don't do the others. And I think we have the resources available to do that. If we look at what's charged with the budget, we've added $500,000 every year, $2 million for the next 5 years. And we have to track that. It doesn't track itself. And we have federal and state reports that have to be completed, reports that have to go to Northwest Suburban. And all of that is built on the basis of what is responsible. So I agree with you, Brady, that I want to move the needle also. But we've been wanting to move the needle in this district, and every district, every year we look at that. We carefully try to take that information and do something with it. Our teachers are working hard, and sometimes even that hard work has to be re-looked at, just like what they're doing at the high school for realigning the schedule and trying to do some things with students, just like we're doing at the middle school, trying to figure out how do we best, intervene with students that are struggling. So no disagreement on that, but I want to make sure that it's clear. We're not adding administrators, at least not that I see, because I don't count adding a clerk or a para or a clerical staff as administration. Because that has a connotation that I think people think, well, you're just bad in your administration. We're not.
So my apologies for using the wrong word of adding administration there. Let me correct it and say adding clerical support. I think my position doesn't change. Like I said, I'm not in disagreement with anything. I think we need the clerical support to make this school function the way that it should function. To me, the most pressing issue is when I look at the Minnesota report card. And I know there's all sorts of data that we gather and that we look at, but when I look at that report card, that's a problem area that I think we need to address. And I don't know, does it require an EL? Does it require teachers? Does it require paras? I don't know. That's what I need the staff. Like that's what I think your team, Paul, needs to come and say, this is how we think we can move the needle. And then once that's done, then I can look and see, okay, this is how much that's going to cost the budget, because I think we need to do more than what we've done in the past. I understand that you've typically approved these positions before you approve the academic positions. So I'm new, and I'm going to play the new guy card and say we should probably do it differently this year. So I'm just going to finish, Paul, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I think we should reverse the order of that, is my opinion to the group. And that we should get a proposal from the administration staff of how we're going to move the needle on reading proficiency, or at least try to, because I think we owe that to the students. And then I'm absolutely thrilled to entertain adding the additional clerical staff to ensure that the school continues to run even better than it does today, because I do support these folks, and I do support our activities, and I do recognize the need. I just, from a timing perspective, you got to get out. If it needs people, we got to get out. We got to hire people, and that takes time. If we're gonna have something in place for 2019, well, that's gonna be here really quick. Same thing goes for the staff to maintain our programs. I guess it's just an order of priority, and I would ask us to consider flipping it and re-adding these to the agenda in the future.
So let me play the old guy card. I've been in this 40 years. I'm making a recommendation on the best experience that I can bring forward, that this is important. I know the stress that we have on the staff, that we're asking to do work. And at some point you will have staff leave just flat out because you don't have enough support for these folks. And I'm telling you that I think that this is a priority, because if you put your clerical staff in place, because they work over the summer, we hire staff all the time. I've been doing it for a lot of years, so I do understand what the market is out there and the importance of being able to do it. There's no disagreement on the need to do it. I believe that there's the resources. I believe the timing is this way because this is something that's been on the agenda for the board for many, many, many months. This isn't something that's a surprise. You've seen the list of areas that were suggested. It's been there for a lot of years. The staff is sitting waiting to see what's going to happen with that too. So we get asked that question a lot. When's the next step for knowing what's going to be happening in clerical support? And you will have to tell us what that priority is. But I just know that there's work to be done, and in order to get the work done, there's going to be some significant training. As an example, you even look later on in the board agendas, the electronic time card system. This is a whole new system that has to be put in through Region 5. This is going to take a significant amount of clerical support, and just having those people in place. And if you're going to be running a training, you bring people in and you train people at the same time instead of training somebody, and then you end up coming in later and then not being able to train the people at the same time. We're going to be making this transition in the summer. This matters to people. Their paychecks matter to people, and making sure that we meet the expectations. Enough said. Our recommendation is to bring it now. If you choose to do it another time, then you'll tell us that and we'll adjust. So I'm okay with that.
Okay, do you have more? Because I think I've got a couple more too. Did you have more you wanted to say? I just want to.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Beth?
Well, just in response to your comments, Paul, I completely understand the burden of the staff in your office, the district offices, but I also want to say I think the teachers are feeling the same way, and what we heard at the work session is trying to move the academics of the district forward are on the backs of very few teachers, and they're doing it on their time. And I'm not saying that all the teachers aren't working, but there's a very few at the elementary that are trying to move the needle, and that's on their time, and they need that support too. And as a steward of furthering our academics in the district, I want to honor that we need to build up more of a robust capacity in that level too. And I think right now we're stressing our teachers out as much as the clerical staff. So what is going to help us move in the direction that we need to go? And how can we figure this out in a fiscally responsible way?
I think that's what the recommendation is.
Jessica?
I don't disagree at all that these positions are needed. I don't disagree with that. But to echo Brady and Beth, I feel the same way in this, that for me, I need to see the big picture before I make a financial decision like this, especially to see where our academics are going to go, what the plan is for that. I would like to see the plan in both areas. I understand that this is the way it's been done in the past. Doesn't always mean that we have to continue on that path. I understand, Paul, you have many, many years experience in this, and that's how it's been done. But for me, I really feel I need to see the whole picture at this time before I can make a decision.
Brady?
My final comment is I do, so my position is stated, I do want to move quickly on the clerical staff. Therefore, I would like to see the plan on, moving the dial on academics, specifically on the numbers that I previously referenced, as soon as next month, and make it and say, okay, this is what that costs. Let's give it a shot. Let's go forward, and let's approve those positions as well, so we can retain the great people or hire the people that we need to do. We're talking about 30 days here, and if we lose 30 days, if we lose people over 30 days, I would feel awful about that. But I think it's the right thing for the district, in my opinion. So, but I feel the need to move quickly, and I recognize and appreciate that. So,
Eric?
So, a couple of weeks ago, we had a very nice presentation from our elementary interventionists and direct people supporting kindergarten group. That's not our only level of need of intervention, okay? So I don't want to have our focus be solely on the one group that did our presentation, okay? We have no interventionists at the high school nor the middle school at this time, okay? And there are staff at the elementary, granted maybe not enough, but we have to not be limited in view that way. If we look at continual school improvement, I'm not going to say whether I'm for or against any of this so far, but if we look at continual school improvement, I don't know through my previous positions if in a 30-day turnaround it's realistic for the district to say these are going to be our instructional goals and our instructional strategies, and then how do we staff those backwards. I think there's going to be a paradigm shift, I'm hoping, in our district to be able to look that direction a little bit deeper and have annual goals and annual measures of where we're going. I just, and Brady, I completely agree. We need to have a big picture of where we are, but I believe it's going to take time for us to assess what we've done, not only at the elementary, middle, and high, and then come up with a plan and measure that to see if we're successful. We're understaffed, right? completely, all levels. Administrative, down to cleric, down to our facilities, maintenance crew. And we do have to make the best decisions for our children, as well as for our community. And it's been said we're breaking the backs of our workers based on what was given to us in terms of funding. I think shares information that she'll share in a little while about the state of the budget should help a little bit with this. The 2% biennium will help as well. But I believe we need to, instead of say, I want to add this, I want to do this program, I want to do that, I would rather have a group of people come to us and say, this is our proposal, this is how we are going to supply these goals, this is what we're going to do instructionally across our district in order to move us forward, and then measure that and figure out if we need to make amends or add additional staff. That's my own personal view from working in this profession for a while. It's hard to turn a ship this size on a dime. So maybe I should say a penny because our budget's small.
Yeah.
So that's just my own thoughts on this. So.
Can I go?
Go for it.
All right.
Kevin.
I will say I'm thinking about our retreat, and one of the things that you came out very clear is you care about education, right? And one of the things that we talked about, and you and Paul have very similar
Lines.
Yeah,
That works
they're
well.
almost identical.
They're pretty identical.
I don't know.
Maybe you
I don't know who should be more frightened.
Mine's taller.
So what I love about it,
The line.
what I love about it, Brady, and your passion is we got to do something, right, about the academics of our school district. And when I talk to Paul, he'll say the same thing, right? And so to come with that passion of we have spots we gotta improve. I'm right there with you, right? And if this were a $50, $70, $80,000 thing, and Paul and I have had some conversation already on this, right? And so I've been seeing the need for a while in this area, and that's why I started by fiscally conservative, right? And for me, this is we got a gap here, and we have to fill it. So that's where I'm at in here. So when I hear Paul talk, I know he has the passion for you, or the same passion for the academics, and the broader of how do I run a district across everything. So Dan oversees a ton of activities that are happening, right? And one of the areas, if you look at the program where you can see the most need, it's in that the scheduling, the calendars, all that kind of stuff. And if we can fix that with $20,000-ish, I think that's a great move. And looking at the budget and knowing some of the other forecast things of, hey, we're gonna have to do some things, I think that doesn't eliminate the strength of let's look out and see where we're putting our resources into academics. So I don't think by hiring this, we won't adjust the needle. I truly believe that needle is something we're going to talk about all the time as our board. So that's why I made the motion, and that's why I would like us to move forward with that.
Any other comments?
The administrative team will meet. What?
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, and that is our charge, is to set the academic staffing and have that discussion K-12. We do it every year to try and figure out what's the best way to staff our buildings. And the answer is not always one that is easy for staff to see, because they have the worm's eye view. They're looking directly at their grade. And they may not look at, if let's say it's first grade, they may not be looking at what's happening in ninth grade or what's happening in fifth grade. But when we sit down, that's what we talk about, the whole staffing of the district. And sometimes we have some factors that are impacting that even board may not know about, licensure issues or we may be on waivers, and we may be in situations where we got to shift people around just because of the lack of inability to get somebody licensed in a specific area. So there's things that happen that are outside of what necessarily might be impacting the board. But I do understand the importance of pulling us all together, looking at how we're going to move the needle. We talked about that, believe it or not, last year, and we talked about it the year before. We are always trying to assess how's the best way to try and move the needle. And if the needle moves the wrong way, then we'd say that wasn't successful. It doesn't mean that people aren't working hard, though.
Absolutely.
So.
Thank you. So just 2 cents, not as long as your 3 cents. When I think about this, again, I'm super conservative fiscally, generally speaking. I think we've got a lot of things going on in our district right now. One is we're launching this IB program, which is tremendous work, which is tremendous opportunity for the district, and tremendous burden's probably the wrong word, but a lot of work for our guidance team, right? And making sure that grades are matching up and partnering with our teachers in the high school level and all of those sort of things. There's an opportunity to offset a portion of that work with our IB grant, right? So as Paul is putting together all of the different funding sources, to me that makes a ton of sense, right? So, and then we also have a really huge activities program, and as I think about it, we either need to support it an appropriate way with the right staff or cut back on activities. I mean, that's where my head goes, because I think about all of the buses that department is coordinating and transporting the children of this district from point A to point B in different places, all of that. It's a lot. And I'm actually, surprised that more things haven't fallen through, to be honest, than they have, with that respect. So I understand also the need to wait and to see things through. I also would argue or suggest that this is one of those, in similar camp with Kevin, that it's a relatively small investment for a tremendous gain, especially with the offset of the other position with IB grant funding. My worry is that if we were to increase the guidance and then have a halftime activity secretary, I don't even know how that could even function. So it kind of becomes what does this district need in order to thrive and succeed, and you do need some level of support. So that's my 2 cents, not 3.
It was almost as long.
Was it? Shoot, did you time me? Darn it.
I think it was shorter.
Was it shorter? So, anyway.
All right.
Any other further comments or dialogue on this topic? You do have a motion on that. Oh, great.
So the only thing I'll state, just to save us time later on, is I'll say the same thing for 7E.
Sounds good. So we do have a motion on the table.
Yeah, I'll call the question.
What?
Robert's rule, I can call the question, then we have to vote.
Okay.
Right, so I'll call the question.
All right, should we vote? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So we have 4-2.
Congratulations on your first
Pass though, right?
vote.
It did. Yeah, passed by majority.
Which, by the way, can be healthy, right?
Absolutely.
That's a good thing.
Good discussion, good dialogue.
Yeah.
All right. Next agenda item is the resolution and thank you everybody for, this is what a good, strong board does. We talk about things. All right, next is the acknowledgement of contributions resolution. This is a resolution item, so it will be a roll call item. Superintendent Drain, is there anything you want to call out specific to this topic?
Well, just the pure number of donations is just awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And one of the things that happens with every donation is you have to track it. You have to keep track of it. And I know that our activities director has been out working to try and develop relationships with lots of different groups that donate us resources. These aren't all for our activities department, but there's a lot of them that are there. And each of those relationships, I think, bring us good results. Like the Vikings, where he made the relationship with the Vikings, and we got free training for how many years, Dan? 2 years?
Trainer.
2 years for free?
Three.
Three
free, and then 3/4, half, quarter. So it's still.
And that's just an amazing, and I know that we didn't have that in the past. So every time you do good things like that, you do have to make sure that you're properly managing it so that they continue to support us.
Great. And you'll see a lot of Rockford Ed Foundation donations this month as well, and that is quite a lot of community support. I mean, just thinking about how many fingerprints are actually on those line items and how many community members have donated to that foundation so that our classrooms could have the supplies that they need is pretty impressive, even though you don't see every individual's name on that. It's pretty cool. And every month when I look at this, I think about how lucky we are to live in a community this supportive. So with that, it's a 2-page donation list this month, which is tremendous. So I will take a motion from somebody on this one.
I'll make a motion to accept money. Do I have to say it more formally? Motion for resolution to accept contributions and donations.
All right, do I have a second for that?
All three of us will second. That's 6 of us.
Jessica.
I'll second.
Has a second. All right, so since this is a resolution, this will be roll call. Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Beth Kreska.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. And it passes. Wonderful. Next, business managers report. Sharon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll jump right in as it's been a long evening and people are leaving already, so I'll hurry along here. Business manager report for April. The enrollment is sitting at a cumulative 1654, and on a certain date of April 30th, it was at 1639. So I'm projecting we're going to end somewhere around 1650. We're real close to there at the end of the year. And the revenue expense summary for April, 67 and 83% of the way through the year, school and fiscal year. For April, our year-to-date total expenditures are 76%, very close to last year, we were at 74. And that falls within the 67 and 83. And our revenues are sitting at 70%, and last year it was 71. So we're right on track where we should be. I did do a budget revision, which we'll do next, because there was some areas, if you look at the individual lines, they were a little over compared to last year and where they are supposed to be. So we do have a budget revision coming up. Any questions on this? All right, I'll jump right into the budget revision. I just want a quick touch base on a comment Eric made about projections and the 2%, I think it was Eric I was listening to here. This is just a budget revision for this year. It takes a lot of time to prepare it, and I didn't finish with it till last Thursday. Just starting to work on the budget for next year, and with that, when I present it in June, there'll be projections, a 5-year projection. We couldn't work on that now because 1, time with things going on in the district office, and 2, the state just settled on their 2%. Okay. All right, page 2. This represents our best estimates of revenues expenditures at this point in time. Page 3, the budget assumptions are based on 1,807 adjusted pupil units, and I apologize, when I was looking at this, I saw it says actual. It's supposed to say not student count. Student count is 1,655. But the adjusted pupil units is the weighted factor. And the last revision we did in December, it was 1,793 adjusted pupil units, so it's gone up a little bit. Our formula for state aid is 6,000 $312, and benefits and salaries are based off actual contracts right now, and other expenditures are based off current year-to-date through April 30th, and then we had to estimate the last 2 months.
Just to point out, and I think 3 of you would know this, but we have started with principal negotiations, and we have received a letter from the teachers to begin teacher contract negotiations, and I've already met with one of their negotiators to talk about a memorandum of understanding from the unrequested leave policy. So that will impact all of the budget, but it is a pretty major factor, and it depends upon the timing of how long it takes to pass those contracts before we can plug those numbers in.
Yeah, and again, that would be for next year's budget. It doesn't affect this year's budget. Page 4, this is the general fund. Revenues on top, expenditures on the bottom. And the first column shows you the budget that was currently approved in December. The next column is the revision right now. So revenues went up by $524,000. Most of that is due to the IB grant. If you look down on the left-hand side, it says federal resources, and right below that is the IB grant. It was not included in the revision in December. We just didn't have enough information at that time. So now it's included. Expenditures also increased by $172,000. Most of that is due to expenditures of the IB grant. And like Matthew kind of touched on earlier, it was hard to input it in because our fiscal year runs July through June. Federal grant runs October through September. So when we get to the last page, I'll explain a little bit more about that then. Any questions on general fund? Page 5 is Fund 2, which is our food service. That didn't change. Their contract and budget, they give us at the beginning of the year, and it stays that way for the whole year. Page 6 is Fund 4. Revenues decreased by about $66,000, and some of that was just from the state aid and levy aid ratio formula, the top 2 lines, and the other one was decrease in the projection of fees that they collected. Expenditures decreased also by $27,000, so decrease and decrease in revenues and expenditures, it really wasn't that big of a loss. Page 7 is our debt service, and that did not change. A little bit of interest and property tax levy. Fund 21, we did have an increase in revenues and an increase in expenditures. Between the two, the difference over revenues over expenditures is only about $8,000. But that's a hard one to always budget because you have to just kind of look at what happened last year. They're all different each year and what they want to do. So, page 9 is our OPEB, our other post-employee benefits. Again, that didn't change from the last revision, just a little bit of interest. And the last page, you want to look at column B, which was the fund balance last June audited. Column C is our projected revenues. Column D is the projected expenditures. And then column G is where we're projecting to end June 30th. So you'd look at the first few columns where you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Total restricted revenue fund balance, the first shaded area. All of those columns above that are restricted funds. We can only spend them on certain things. The next section down, again, that's assigned funds like QComp and capital. The board has told us to put capital money away. Again, that's kind of restricted. The bottom balance is what we look at in order to get our board-approved fund balance. And that would be the projected balance divided by the expenditures. So we're sitting at 16.2 is our projection. And in December, we were at 14.58. The difference there really, if you remove the IB grant, was the IB grant. Overall, the section at the bottom there is all the different funds. So we are at $25.8 million for revenues, $25.9 for expenditures, with a deficit of $92,212. And it's about $300,000 better than December. We were at $388. Any questions?
No, I mean, I think just underlining one thing, taking out the IB, right? Our fund balance is at 14%.
It's at 14.8, I believe it was when I pulled it out.
Almost 15%, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good spot for a district of this size.
And we were at 5%.
Yeah.
And so that over the course of years, we have worked our way up to a good, healthy fund balance.
Good. Yep.
And that is majorly impacted by student enrollment. If your enrollment is flat or growing, it's good. If you start losing too many students, then you have a negative draw on your revenues.
What's the board's recommended or fund balance goal, Paul?
8 to 10%.
8 to 10.
Yeah, so we're doing very well right now. Like I said, I haven't started on next year's, but I'm anticipating with the referendum, the IB grant with the 2%, that it's going to look good. I don't anticipate any issues.
So that will dovetail nicely into a future conversation around academics.
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. Awesome, thank you.
And that one needs to be approved.
That is just a regular, it's not a roll call, so.
So I'll make a motion to approve the 2018-19 budget revision as written and presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes.
Thank you. The next item is capital outlay for 1920. We have to have a capital outlay budget approved and submitted to MDE by the end of June. So if you look at it, our projected balance for the end of this June is $1,053,000. And projected budget for next year is $268,000 of revenue, $509 of expenditures, which would leave $810,000 in our capital. Some of the things that were included, special ed requested some Chromebooks. We've got curriculum in there. We try to put our technology in there because technology is one of the items that the statute says we can use funds for capital. And then the other areas were maintenance and building operations.
One of the big deltas for last year, because it looks like it's a major change, and that was the construction of the science lab at the high school. And so that was about 300, I don't remember exactly, 300,000.
Right around, yeah, it was 298.
Is that under the district operations there?
Must be.
So Paul, will some of these funds be offset by the inclusion of IB money, I would guess?
It will be.
Okay.
But we have to make sure that we're really careful as we roll out the use of that funds. We don't want to have something that, technology be one of the pieces. We have to make sure not just that we get the equipment and the software, but we also make sure that we have the support to be able to use it and to be able to keep it running.
Does that also incorporate the Ed Foundation money for technology?
No, this is.
Okay. No, I'm saying to offset some of that cost as well, because that was a focus.
It is.
And we have some, looking at it, I think we have $50,000 in technology money from the Ed Foundation yet as a line item, if I recall. Is that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. No, I'm just wondering if some of that is offset based on that donation as well, just to.
I think if we just generally look at our technology, we do have issues with our technology because all of our teacher computers right now are aging out. And so we've got all of those to try and figure out how we're gonna, and obviously we went for a levy for a technology levy, and that would have kind of dealt with that problem so you could project out and plan ahead. It's a little bit trickier to do that when you don't have a secure source of revenue.
Agreed.
But if we're wise with the way that we do it, I think that there's a way that we can at least stretch it out so that we can get to the point where we can ask the public again at some future point. nobody wants to do that, but it is the only way that you can really be guaranteed that you can plan ahead. Because technology is not cheap. But I think we've been pretty cost responsible in how we put that together, and our teachers have been really great about supporting that. I think we're looking at the 9th grade level is trying to roll out cart use and iPad use at, not iPad, Chromebook use at the 9th grade.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And this one does require action.
So does this is what you submit to the state then? And then this can get updated, I presume, and
sure.
Just
Yep,
come back for
yep, they just need to have something
Sure.
every single year.
Looks great.
Would you like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the capital outlay plan.
Do you have a second?
I will second that.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in, is there discussion? No discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye. Stay with the next.
Anyone opposed?
There's questions.
Carries.
Clerk.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Next is.
I just said if there are questions, Cher can answer if there's questions about the clerk position. Because I know that there was, I don't remember which one of you asked for a job description. Somebody asked for a job description, Eric. And so that might be.
Great. Would you like to present this one, Paul, to start with?
You've already heard plenty from me, but Cher has thoughts if you need to ask her about.
So with all the discussion, I respect everybody's opinions. I did go out, and there's a handout in there, and went out to schools that are our size and enrollment. And like Paul's already said, they have 5 or 6 in their district office. We have 4. And I understand teachers and paras and everybody is in need. But there's a lot of things that need to be done, and I'm just afraid that maybe they're not getting looked into as much as they should be. We just kind of have to touch it and keep going. So I would recommend adding another position.
Cher, is this one time sensitive? Could it, because again, I respect kind of where you're at with your team and the work and all of those sort of things. Is this time sensitive where you need action tonight? Is this something where, and that would, impact greatly? Is this something where consideration could be held and understanding more about it? And then, as we continue talking about, the conversation next month, those sort of things, can you help us kind of understand from your perspective, timing and?
The amount of stress that's on my staff is a lot, but is it crucial tonight? No. I mean, we could hold out. It's just that things are not getting done.
Okay.
We're prioritizing, we're doing what we can, but there's just a lot of stuff that is being put aside. And one of the things that Paul pointed out was cross-training. We've been wanting to cross-train for years since I've been here, but we just don't. We can't. We don't have the staff, and they're entitled to vacation, and we get all the time when somebody's out and they only know how to place a purchase order. Well, they're not here and today's the deadline. Well, I'm sorry, but the answer is you should have planned ahead, which isn't what we want to do or want to say, but unfortunately, that's one person who knows how to do that job. So with that being said, yes, it doesn't have to be addressed tonight, but it is very high consideration, I would say.
And then one of the things we've heard about in the past is something around separation of duties. Does this position get at that, or is this separate from that?
This position would get at that. We could separate that out. I'm not an auditor, so I can't say for sure if we could get it completely. There's several different factors that go into that and several different findings. But I think this would eliminate most of it.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions for tonight. Questions, anyone?
So Paul, one thing that might help consideration of this is we know we have 4 great professionals down there, but I don't think we all know what duties are assigned, right? We have state reporting, we have budgeting, we have your Mars folk, you have your assessment court. So we have silos in essence for all of these people. And again, I'm worried about institutional knowledge as well. Like you said, if one of these folk choose to part ways, we have a deficit, right? So, I mean, just what are the responsibilities of not only the folk that are there currently, but what will this person be, I guess, would be good for all involved?
Well, that's not something we did yet, because it's just like any position that you're gonna hire. You don't fill out all the details of what that position is until you really, really see the strengths of the people that you bring in and you try to reassess that. If you just look at one part of the budget, and if you look at it over the past 10 years, just look at special ed. Special education has changed radically with not just the revenues, but the expenditures and the tracking of all of that information. And that alone, I think, speaks for the need for us to make sure that you have people that you can have within your staff to be able to support all of that data that is being collected and being reported back to the state. So who are the people? Paul is basically accounts payable, or she's the payroll person. Yeah. Sarah does accounts clerk for accounts receivable, all the deposits for the school district. Account clerk for accounts payable, responsible for purchasing, ordering, processing, paying of the bills, and then clerical support for the buildings and grounds director. Paula is payroll HR specialist, processes all the payroll time cards, processes monthly payroll and paying corresponding deductions, lane changes, graduation credit approval, technology director support, registrar for all students in the district, food service and benefits liaison, employee benefits management, all the insurances, and then infant campus support. Shearer is the business manager, all employee contract management, budget development, liaison to the 4.0 transportation, and liaison to TAR food service. And Kathy does administrative assistant to the superintendent, school board, public relations, district newsletters, school board meeting procedures, policy development, elections, all the homeschool. That's just part of it for that office. And no matter if you're in the Anoka Hennepin district or if you're in the Rockford district, you have the same state reports that have to get filled out. Somebody was mentioning an idea about doing some data mining, and we used Anoka as an example. I mean, they have a whole department that can do that. Now, it's nice because if we know the people, you can go ask them, hey, could you help us out? Can we slide our data in with your data? And that's how we got that survey completed, because Anoka Hennepin did all the work on it for us because we had that relationship with Northwest Suburban. But some of this stuff you just can't farm out, and you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, and Paula, the payroll, and Sarah, accounts payable, are quoted 20% to technology and buildings and grounds, like Paul just mentioned. So it's really not even a full-time position because they're working, doing things for those departments as well.
Do we have a work session between that? We do not, looking at the...
You get one in June and one business in June, one work session in June.
They're just reversed.
Okay.
So, thank you. So this is a briefing and an action. The board, and the ask is that the board is asked to consider an additional 1.0 FTE clerk position for the business office as described and discussed. if anyone would like to make a motion, they can do so at this time, or if there's further discussion that's warranted.
Actually, I would like to move to postpone to a future board meeting the consideration of this position.
So that is a motion that you've put on?
Correct.
Do you have a second for that motion?
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, so I have a first and a second to postpone the consideration of the clerk position to a future board meeting. Any discussion around that or comments?
Sure, I do. I'm curious what it is that you, in that time of postponement, what do you need to see that would make that decision easier?
Well, as Paul said, you hire towards strengths and you build a position based on strengths, and we heard a litany of tasks and duties. I would like to see a proposal of what this position would be. Right? How are we going to, not necessarily a job description. We have a semblance of job descriptions. So I'd like to see that. I would also like to have a better, in my mind, I have a feeling how this would go right now if we chose to vote. And I would like all members of this board to have the opportunity to process this a little deeper and to have other conversations with the right people at the district to weigh in consideration, as Brady had mentioned. How do we move the needle? How will this support student success? How does this support our current staff? How does this help ease the great burden that's in our administrative assistance staff currently? Knowing state reporting time's coming up quickly. Mars is a terrible thing to have to do, which is the Minnesota reporting, right? Year-end process. I would like to have the ability for good conversation about how this helps us move forward a little bit deeper than just the conversation we have had today.
Okay.
Can I ask a continuing question on that? I'm curious on, this comes out in next year's budget, right? And this would be a year-round position in the clerk position. So normally when would you hire that position? July 1 because it's coming out of next year's budget?
They'd start after July 1. You could interview before that.
So you start the process, but that's where it would impact the budget, would be July 1. Okay.
So can I answer your question? Which was, what do you...
Yeah, sure.
What do you need to see? I think I support this position 100%, I really do. And everything I said before. The other pieces I wanted to add is that I really, in case it wasn't clear, I need to see the plan for moving the needle on academic excellence. I want to understand what the metrics are that we're measuring against, because I've spent hours poring over these MDE reports. So, regardless of how many years of experience anybody has, I can slice and dice this data many different ways now. So there's the items around literacy that were concerning, and whatever the plan is, whatever the metrics are, I just want to know what they are and at what levels. I also, there are other metrics that we can talk about that I've observed in work session that I would like to see us move the needle on, but it shouldn't be something, Eric, you made the comment that it's going to take longer than 30 days, right? So I'm in charge of my budget and my team's performance at my job, and I'm in charge of constantly moving the needle. And I know, right now, what do I need to move the needle if I'm given the resources? And I have no doubt that our leaders here have that at hand as well. So it's compiling it in a meaningful way that we can communicate out to our community. I think that is going to take work, for sure. You know, there's this notion of balanced scorecard. We referenced it in our work session, but I did a little research since our work session on my own, that's like a real thing that people do for institutions of public education like ours. And there's others in Minnesota that have done it. Now, whether or not we need to do that, we don't need to address that yet. I need to see the plan. I need to see the resources. What we've been doing can't be what we continue to do, in my opinion. But that's up to our administrators to recommend, and I would look to them to make that recommendation. So that's what I need to see before approving this.
Just clarifying on that a little bit. For you, is it a so if fiscally we could do, I'm trying to figure out if it's a budget thing or so much an academic thing, right? That's where is it a priority? Hey, this has to happen, this has to be a priority. And then if we have resources left, we can do this, is that?
I'm 90% confident that we'll have the resources that we need to fund the position. Though to me, it's a matter of priority.
Focus. This is our number one.
This is what we're here to do. Our business folks, our administration, our clerks, everybody has been doing such incredible work. The teachers have been doing incredible work. Yeah. So to me, it's a matter of priority. So yeah. There's the short answer.
Let me just say one last thing, and that is the fastest way to make sure that you do not have academic achievement is to run your budget into trouble. And when you don't watch your budget, when you don't have the people to watch the budget and to monitor what's happening, you will end up having problems. And I'm definitely concerned about making sure that we have enough people to do that work. And it isn't about whether I believe we want to move the needle. I want to move the needle, and I think everybody has commonly agreed on that. But it is just, you have to do there's no advocacy group that's going to come and advocate for clerks. It's not there. You will.
And I guess my comment to that is the people that talk to me and know my passion for academic gains for all students, I want to hold that as my highest agenda item. And so when they see us continually adding staff that doesn't directly impact student academics, then they ask me why I've changed my main goal. And so that is not because I don't understand the need. I just have to have my focus be on what can we do academically, and my best hope is that we can work with both and add this position. But I agree with what Brady said. I need to know more and see what can we do, and we might have to add a position or two, and I don't want to not have the funds available for that until I know I have more information.
Yeah, we had a status quo referendum, right? We've tossed that word around enough, and we said we've got to be conservative. So I think we can get everything we need. I really do. I don't think we're asking too much to say, just lay out what the academic plan is and the resourcing and staffing needed to do that, and whether it's above what we've budgeted, below what we've budgeted, and then the next thing you do is then you approve the district clerk position after we have some more information about it. And to me, it's just the order of operations. So yeah, and I don't disagree. Yeah, you need these people to track the information and to collect it and to process it and deal with it. You don't want to lose them. And I think we've asked for a 30-day recess, and I think that, in my opinion, it would provide ample information, on both fronts of academic achievement and additional information about the job.
One of the examples is if you don't have internal staff to cross-train and you lose a staff member, to have payroll, it's $600 a day to have Region 5 come in and cover payroll. That's when you purchase outside services. That's the reality.
Yeah, so yes, it is expensive. Turnover is expensive. I'm not going to get into the percentages. So.
And I don't think I don't want to put words in your mouth, Brady, but when you're asking for a plan, like how can we make some academic gains. I would just like even an outline, and then maybe we come together with a small group that can move it forward, because I realize we only have 30 days. So it doesn't have to be an extensive, but I think just starting that conversation and what we can do, and then we can come back and look at that and what does it involve with staff and readdress this clerk position, because I hear what you're saying, Paul, and I'm hoping everyone can hang in there for 30 more days.
Does everyone know how things get on the agenda? So make sure that you understand how to put things on the agenda. Because administration brings some things, but also I meet with the vice chair and the chair and say, is this something that you want to put on the agenda? And if it is, then we put it on. If it's something that you say, no, I don't think it's the right time to put it on, then we don't put it on. Because obviously it's important to make sure that we have kind of some consistency in what we're doing. Because we don't just throw things on for the heck of it. We put it on there because we think that it's something that, as you look at what the workloads that are coming on, for example, as you start your negotiations or you start all of those things create work.
I respect.
Enough said.
I respect that, Paul, tremendously. I feel that there definitely is tremendous need for this, as other members of the board have stated. Also, being elected to this office and hearing over and over where we are fiscally, I trust Cher in the budget, but I'm here as an educator as well, and I want to see that to make this decision, to know that this is where we want to put funds. I want to make sure that we have those funds that we are able to fund to help those students directly. And I feel 30 days isn't much to ask on behalf of the board, to ask 30 days so that we can see that. And
I also want to be very realistic. What you're asking us to put together is an academic plan to move the needle in this school, in literacy, let's say, in 30 days. In 12 days, we're going to lose a majority of our staff. We're going to be gone. So that's going to be a plan that the administration puts together and brings to the board and says, here's what we're going to do. You have to understand that's not a pulling together all of your staff to come up and work out a plan. It is putting together something that is in 30 days given to you.
I really do hope that this isn't something that is new, that this is something that has been in the works, that has been worked on and people are looking at, and that this is something that is there, that it isn't something new, that in 30 days it isn't coming up with something new, that it's something that has been continually worked on, and we have an idea of what we would like for the next school year, and that is what's going to come to us, that this isn't just something new.
So I think, I'm trying to paraphrase here.
Please.
I'm thinking what I'm hearing you say is maybe less about weedy details and those sort of things. You need to know, which I think is part of our normal June process of setting the budget for the next calendar year. What investment, does this district need to make in education, taking into account academic achievement, taking into account projections on class sizes, taking into account, which is their business as usual for June, And so I think from what I'm hearing, that this one might be a timing thing. And that, if the team has a understanding of what investment you feel is critical and important to make in the education side in the classrooms, in addition to the critical investment that I'm hearing this board say, we hear you. Like this, with all of the regulations and all of the things that need to happen, all of the details that need to be covered, I'm looking at Cher, there's it makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely.
And what I'm also hearing this board say is we want to just see and help see the big picture as that conversation unfolds. And June is the time when you always bring that to the board with your projections for the next year and what the team needs. And you're meeting with them on Wednesday. Am I hearing that correctly?
And I think,
Go ahead.
and I think that what had transpired at our last work session with Paul sharing the one sheet goal that our district had, and the conversation that we all had saying we'd like to understand how we're going to move forward. A 2011 document needs to be addressed and needs to be updated. And to Brady's point, how do we make smarts? You know, how do we identify as a district level first at the top level what are our district priorities, which then filter down to the building leaders, providing us this is how the building will then address these things, and absolutely. So this is a continued conversation of how do we move our district forward with addressing that strategic plan isn't the right word for what we have in place right now, but for lack of other things, a strategic plan. So I think we're going into the right direction, personally.
So I think of all my MSBA training and what we're going to do, just the pulse of what we're going to do at this vote is we're going to say to our superintendent, we don't want to do what you want to do right now. And the superintendent also has met with different admin teams. So it's our right, it's our power, our authority. But what we're doing is we're saying to them, we're not doing that right now, right? So I don't like that. I like the sense of they're in the positions that they're in because of their skill and different people. So my default is going to be, okay, if this is what we need to do now, this is what we need to do now. And if I am going to vote yes with postponement, right? I think there's something about having a unified board on some things. If I'm going to do that, I really want to be clear on the next 30 days, right? So what has to happen, back to that original question, is what are those 30 days? Is that the administration who meets on Wednesday? Is that them saying, these are our academic priorities and this is meeting with Share, we have funds to go to this, and this fund also works in here. Paul has brought a list, we've seen it as a board of different potential pieces. Is that having that all done by the next meeting where we can kind of go, okay, I don't think we're going to fix I don't think we'll be able to address all the academic opportunities, right? But having a sense of direction. What is it that if the clerk is the right role, just not at the right time, what makes 30 days from now the right time?
Do you want, I'll take a shot at that. Two metrics that I've been continuing to look at, and I think that our administrative team can do a better job of broadening my perspective on the metrics that are really important. But looking at the MDE site, it's how are we going to reverse the trend in literacy at the elementary level? What is the plan for that? Specifically, that's one item, and that's not because we had a presentation from a couple of people last week. That's because I've been looking at the MDE reports. And I also want to know what we're going to do to improve the number of percent experienced educators in our district, which is educators with more than 3 years of experience within the district. So that's the retention piece. Those are the two key metrics that I want to see a plan around, and I'm sure there are more key metrics. This is all my perspective is driven around data that I'm looking at off of MDE, which is no doubt with blinders on to many areas of the district operations. But this is what the state sees, this is what residents see, they're important numbers, and I think they do signify important aspects of our operations. Those are two specific ones I want to see a plan around, and that's if I see that, away we go, you know? Probably oversimplifying things, but.
So, is that possible?
No,
So my question is,
not in the timeline. I mean, just to be straight with you.
okay, I
mean, like-
I don't know how.
Improving the percentage of experienced educators and retention plan for hiring or retaining staff. That, just getting our arms around that to figure out who we have for staff and what has changed, that's a pretty big task. And then put a plan in place so that we can move that needle. That's what you want to do. I don't know if everybody else wants to do the same thing.
No, yeah, and that may not be the case, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just saying is that when I get direction from the majority of the board is what you want to do, that's what I'll do. Not that your ideas aren't good ideas or Amy's ideas aren't
Totally
good
get
ideas.
it.
You just all have to
Fair.
get on the same page. Because we can't be answering to 6 different people who all want something different.
And it has to be possible, right? If we're going to do something, then it has to be, like, it could be a great idea. Is it possible gonna get that done? Otherwise, we're just postponing this till forever. We're not really gonna look at it in 30 days, because we're just not there. So that's what I would like to know, is what needs to happen that is possible, that it makes sense to delay, or do we just not, I mean, otherwise we just don't deal anything with it, right?
Number 1 is easier. That's easier to get your arms around. Number 2 is harder.
So say what number 1 and number 2 are. What do you mean?
Reverse the trend in literacy at the elementary.
Because isn't part of that in our improvement plan, the SIP that's currently?
It is.
So you could come out in 30 days and tell us how we're gonna do that?
We could, because that's a part of a state required plan.
Yeah. And then what I'd like to see is a little bit more detail, instead of just looking at it every year, how can we delve deeper into that SIP plan that's more quarterly or something? And I think moving the needle with that will help number 2.
And part of that's training. And part of that is in conversations with elementary teachers. They need training and fast. They haven't had training to even understand how to utilize the data that they're looking at. And that's a training piece that takes resources, time, and energy to do that. So as when we're training the high school staff on IB, we need to train the elementary staff on the use of FAST. And there may be a different training that's happening at the middle school, but that's in conjunction with our administrative team trying to figure out how does that all work together.
And I don't want to say that they don't need fast training, because I think that's important, but more so they need training once they have that data, what to do with it. Because fast is just it's the system that collects the data. But then when they have that data, more importantly, what is that telling me and where do I go next? The training to understand how to read fast data.
And I think that's part of what we had a conversation around data and technology integration, as somebody that would teach us to use the data, teach us to use the technology so that it's to the advantage as we adjust and modify. Those are things that there's been some conversations around.
Any further comments?
Kathy, I think I had a motion that failed for the lack of a second, correct?
No, there's a second. We've been discussing that motion
I wasn't paying
for the
attention.
last 30
We can
minutes.
call for
Yep.
the
I
motion.
forgot.
We need to vote.
We can call for the
Yeah.
motion.
We can vote.
And will you state what your motion was again? It was to postpone.
Postpone the consideration of the addition of a clerk at this time.
Till the next.
I didn't say that. No, I just, it'll be up then to our chair and vice chair and the superintendent to reintroduce that object onto our agenda
At a later date.
at their time they feel fit, which I'm never fit.
So that is the motion on the table. There's a request to postpone this agenda item. Or I should say, we've talked about this. It's the request to postpone action until a future board meeting. Any further discussion?
In the, to recognize that it needs to be acted on soon, per Paul's recommendation, can we say at the next board meeting? I mean, we may or may not have information that we need, but at that point, just,
Or we
if you
leave
don't
it
have
up
the
to
information you
the
need.
chair and the vice chair, if they choose, if they feel we need to put it on, they'll put it on.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. We know there's urgency and we want to recognize that to
Yes,
the folks that are in
absolutely.
that office. So this is not a no, it's a we need more information first.
And that was my reason.
Okay. Right, any further discussion or comments or conversation? And I think that's one of the things too, that in past boards, we've wanted to ensure that people feel comfortable with whatever is being voted upon and that you have the information that you need in order to vote in good conscience. And I think this has been a really healthy dialogue tonight on this particular topic. So if there's no further discussion, we can call a vote. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next agenda item. Okay. This will be the first reading of policy 705.1R, post-issuance debt compliance policy. Oh, second reading it says first, sorry.
Oh, it does on the,
Oh,
it does up there.
It's fine, and it says action.
Yes.
So this is a second.
I was hurrying.
It's okay, sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that either. So, this was presented last month. Any discussion? All right, I would entertain a motion as this is an action item.
I'll make a motion that we accept policy 705.1R as it was written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes. Next agenda item, the electric time card system, presented by Sharon. Would you please join us again?
So this is just some information that we will be moving to electronic time cards starting fiscal year 2020. We're going to be using our Region is our software right now for our finance and HR, and they have a time card plus electronic system for time cards. We're going to start out with just hourly employees and get it up and running. It'll be easier to start on July 1st because a lot of the employees aren't back yet. So we'll have a couple payrolls of kind of a test run, so to say, and checked with a lot of other school districts. We are probably one of the last ones that has not gone to this. It's just more effective, efficient, and accurate.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then we'll be training once we get training, but we're in the process of purchasing it right now, so.
Okay, great.
All right?
Thanks. That was just an information. Thank you. Next agenda item, we actually presented this last month, but because Kevin, you were not here, and because you are a board member with an electronic signature, it was actually me that said we should wait. I'm sorry. But I felt it was important that everybody had an opportunity to vote in on this because it's yours and mine and everybody's electronic signatures. So basically last month, Paul presented to the board to consider the use of electronic signatures for employee contracts. And then if we agree, contracts in the future that require could have them done electronically. I do believe we talked about that best practice would be to actually sign them. And then if for some reason we miss one or whatever, and Kathy calls and says, oh, shoot, can you review this electronically? And we say, yep, absolutely, good to go. Kathy can just pop our electronic signature on it versus waiting for one of us to find the time in our workday to come and do it. So we want to not impede contract signatures based on our schedule and get those in the hands of our staff as soon as possible. Jessica.
Just a question on it, the electronics, is it gonna be something like DocuSign where we would actually have to log in to do it? It'll be different, right? I just wanted to be clear on that because there is
Yep.
a program that I had to use that I would send documents and people would put their electronic signature in it, so.
No, it's not that.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the electronic signature on employee contracts, the use of that.
I have a first, do I have a second?
Yep, second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next agenda item is the time and place of board meetings for 2019-2020 school year. As presented in our packet, this is an action item. We usually take a look at this about this time every year, correct? Just to take a look at the general calendar. It allows Kathy to get things planned out for the full next year if we look at it now. Does anyone have any additional comments on this, Paul, or team, any questions
Just
or
the 15th
clarifications?
of July.
Oh, right, there was a date. Yep,
It was
okay.
changed from the 22nd due to a conflict.
Okay.
Make sure I have that
And then
on
if
my
you look
calendar.
on the March 2nd, the work session is starting later because of the scheduled spring activities meeting. Wouldn't make sense to have a meeting in here when you had hundreds of people outside there, so wait till after.
What?
And I think this year is that the one that something else was scheduled the same time as spring activities? It was like so much going on that we actually ended up even moving our work session to a totally different date.
I think so.
Yeah, so just something to keep in line of sight too, I guess, if that day starts to get real popular. Because I think wasn't activities and what was it? It was something else which then made it a really good, that made it such a good attendance for the, yeah.
And we looked at that already too.
Okay. So that's a different night next year? Or
I believe
to
it's
be
in
determined?
February.
Okay, got it. Okay. Any other
We had a
questions?
meeting last week with all of the staff to look at conflicts, so we did that.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments? Please note the July change, which will affect summer schedules. All right, this is an action item, so I would entertain a motion if there's no further discussion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the 2019-20 calendar.
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Calendar, our school board calendar passes. Next agenda item is the proposed 2019-20 district parent-student handbook presented by Superintendent Duran. And this is a briefing item, correct? That's what I see.
This is just, each of the principals look at, with their clerical staff, they look at this district parent-student handbook and make necessary changes that they see, that either dates, fees, or changes in policies or guidelines.
One of the things I see, Paul, and sorry to give you a heads up, but can you talk just a little bit about going away from a zero tolerance policy?
Where do you see that?
Sorry, that's on,
Page 78.
yeah, page 78 on the weapons spot. We crossed out takes a zero tolerance position,
Yeah.
and it does not allow it.
Minnesota School Boards Association recommends that you move away from a zero tolerance policy because it takes away from judgment, and the whole idea of having people hired into positions is to trust their judgment and let them utilize the unique situations that are happening with children rather than having an automatic, which could be too punitive, or it could be not stern enough to be able to deal with but the whole goal is to resolve the issue. So we don't believe that that's a viable option.
Honestly, personally, I'm a big fan of that. I mean, that's,
You're a big fan of zero tolerance?
no, I'm a big fan of
The
having
change.
insight into that, right? And be able to, yeah, that change, that's what I'm saying. Makes sense.
Any other questions?
The one addition that may be new, and that's the retaliation policy, that's the retaliation guideline that's in there, and that was one that Bobby had suggested, having had that at a previous school, and felt that it's important that we kind of spell that out, so that if there are discipline with a student, that they might not retaliate against another student or staff member. Just a briefing, so we'll bring it back next meeting. If you have any issues, let us know, and we'll get to the principals and have them consider your feedback.
Can you, and the only reason is because this came up at Northwest Suburban Hall, so it's fresh in my mind, or I should say last week, with district policy, because I knew this was a first read, 501, there's that exception clause, and it's an MSBA model policy, but it reads a little funny. And if you discover a weapon and can bring it in and turn it in and it's fine, can we just take a look at that and crosswalk that with whatever's written in the student handbook?
What page are you on?
So it's the
70.
Yeah.
The weapons prohibition one.
Yep. So it's page 78. And it says to refer to district policy 501. I would just wonder if somebody could take a look and read district policy 501.
Those words came from policy 501.
I bet it did. And there's an exception part in that, which is super interesting. And it's an MSBA model policy, and we haven't had it come back to this board for a review again for a little while. But it happened to be at Northwest Suburban, and we had an interesting dialogue around it. So I would just ask to take a look at the exceptions language in that policy.
So would you like us to bring the exception back with this weapons prohibition and then have you discuss it, or do you want to?
No, I just want you guys to look at it. That's not, doesn't need to come back to me until like we're ready to review that actual policy 501 in this district. I just want to make sure it's not in any conflict or
We'll put it
whatever.
on the administrative agenda to discuss on Wednesday.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Only because it's top of mind. It surprised me.
It's this.
Yeah. See it?
Yep.
Yep, got it. Cool. All right. So, thank you. Awesome. Next, any other further discussion on that? Moving right along, district staff handbook. This is a briefing and an action. We do this every year. Paul, do you have anything you'd like to add to it?
It's basically the same as,
so that's why
it's online, it's the same as was before, there was no,
No changes? Perfect.
Well, there is changes,
but nothing major.
but it follows federal guidelines. It's online. So
Yeah.
that's why it's briefing in action.
Okay.
No matter what, we have to do what
Yep.
we have online.
Got it.
So it's like.
You really can't vote
All right. Any questions on this agenda item?
So it's up to you if you want to do it now or later.
So if you want to act on it, you can, or you want to wait to do them all at the same time, you can.
Oh, okay. Yep, it's up to you.
It says that's
Okay.
Are they all action?
It's not going to change.
No.
Well, is there anything that's going to change in it? Is there any, so.
That's why it's both.
So it is an action. If people want a month, you can ask for that too, or if we want to act upon it, that's the request of the district, so.
With the district handbook, anytime that there's a federal or state change, we bring it back to you and then we change it, because the active document is the one that's online,
Okay.
not a hard copy, because it changes, so
Yep.
once it changes.
Yep. Okay.
And any district policy is covered by state or federal law.
Yep. So with that, I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the district staff handbook as written.
All right. Second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, next agenda, and motion passes. And next agenda item is the proposed 2019-20 Reams Staff Handbook. This is a briefing action, similar to our two agenda previous. No action on this one this month. Looks like all of the Recommended changes are redlined or red font. And that have just been literally pulled into the agenda for easy review. Any questions? Thank you for that, by the way. Any questions? Yeah, any questions on that? All right, so we will have that as an action next month then, is that correct? That's what you need? Perfect. Next is a briefing on the proposed 2019-20 Early Childhood Parent and Staff Handbooks. This is a briefing briefing item this month. And then approval would be considered at a June meeting. Paul, Tiffany's not here. Is there anything you'd like to add to this, or?
It's just dates, prices, names, so on. Each of these, one of them is going back to the Community Advisory Council for review. I don't know, Brady, did you do that at the last meeting?
Yeah, they have two policies that'll be coming up associated with student withdrawal and makeup days are the policies that they'll be bringing forward. So.
Okay, so this is just going to come back next meeting.
They were just giving a heads up at the advisory board meeting.
And we expect that these should all be done before the July 1st because that's when they start putting it all together for the next year's school attendance.
Great. So we'll anticipate that at the June meeting. And the community advisory group will have provided their insight before then. Brady's at the...
Already done, basically.
Okay,
yeah, they'll have it. They're fairly simple updates.
Cool. Great. All right. Got a couple more things to clip through, and then we'll adjourn the regular meeting and go into our closed session. So,
staff.
What? Oh, we can just, yeah, staff can go. Does Sherry need to stay? Sherry stay.
Are you going to stay?
She's like, what? No.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you staying for the closed
No,
session?
because if we have questions, I'm supposed to, I can't chance to answer. That's why.
Thank you.
Night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right. Paul,
We'll just
turn
read
it
through
over
these.
to you.
NHS induction senior awards night. Remember that NHS has been moved.
Yeah, NHS went to.
The senior awards night is staying on the same night,
So it's 7:30 start time.
starting at 7:30. Yep.
It's really cool if you can be there.
Yeah, it's on the
Amy,
calendar, it's
you're
on the
presenting.
calendar.
Amy, you're gonna be there, right?
Oh,
Surprise.
Well,
I didn't know.
okay.
Great, yes.
Chuck did last time, so
Okay.
I forgot to.
Got it.
We'll send you.
I've been to every one
one.
since I graduated except for two.
emailed to
She thought, we thought you were.
I don't present.
Yes, I
Came out of
thought the high school did it, so.
Well, we'll make sure you get what you need to read.
Looking forward to that.
Amy, you'll do
It's
great.
That much.
Superintendent's dinner and commencement. The dinner starts at 5 o'clock. It's in the front commons of the high school.
Let me know if you're coming or not coming.
I'm coming.
And
With spouse or not spouse, I need to
I
know that too.
doubt that one, so just put me
Bartholomew,
down.
is that right, Bartholomew?
Yep, Corey Bartholomew.
That's gonna be really exciting, the astronaut.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then Rick Martinson, the astronaut.
Yeah.
Rockford Rick.
End of year staff assembly, that's being split up between Beth, Jessica, and Amy are doing the presentations on that for the
Awards.
resource training and solutions for support staff and for teachers, and then the STAR Awards. So those are all being worked on. Regular board meeting, June 17th.
I mentioned that I will be out on the 17th in Mexico on a missions trip. So I would love if we could move it ahead, and I get June. So if we can't, we can't. But
Move the date ahead.
yeah,
Let's see.
Or
June 17th.
when are you back?
well, I'm back for the next work session, but
But that's,
that's one too late.
when do you leave?
I leave the 16th.
The meeting then.
Do you want
Busy the
to move
15th.
it to a non-Monday night?
I would love to.
You leave it on the 16th from there to come back?
No, I
So he
leave
needs
to go.
there.
When do you
Yeah.
come back?
But our
I'll be
meeting-
back for the
But
Monday.
our
the next
meeting's on the
following.
15th.
Our meeting's on the 17th.
No, our
You're
meeting.
looking in July.
Oh, sorry, I am.
So what about,
No,
what about
June.
the
Oh, sorry,
what
I'm in-
about
I'm in the wrong
14th,
year.
The 13th, Thursday the 13th.
13th would be great for me.
No, I'll be out of town.
Sports.
I will be out of town.
Wednesdays are the only days that aren't.
What about Wednesday the 12th?
I can make it happen.
I can't. I'm gonna be up in Alexandria for Nicole's trap shooting.
Let's look at the
I already
following
booked a
week.
hotel. I could have her drive up
The 10th,
and meet her up there.
the 10th.
Or the
Monday the
24th.
10th?
We get
That's
into, like,
early.
We
next
have a work
week here.
session the 24th.
That doesn't give them a lot of time to put that meeting together
Yeah,
with the last couple weeks of school.
especially since we
When
just
are you
asked
back?
them.
Okay, just a thought. Board meeting 24th, work session 26th. I know it's a lot in 1 week.
Kathy's gonna be gone.
I'm gone that week too. That whole
That
week.
whole week?
That week of that last week of June, I'm out.
We probably just need to have the
Right,
meeting
and the
without you.
24th.
Yeah, sorry.
That's right.
Because
All right.
all of our calendars are like multi-spectral,
I just think going the week early doesn't give you guys enough time.
especially since we just asked them to do some stuff.
Right, with what we've asked.
Well, in addition to that, just on the side, I've picked up all of Jim Lure's work.
Right, you have,
So
yeah.
all of the paperwork
Yeah.
that's normally cleared through his office is being cleared in my office.
Right.
So I've seen less than chipper, it might be because of that. And
You don't
Jim-
like being in a building to grow? Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
mind it, but Jim's got,
Right.
it could be up to 12 weeks.
How's he doing?
So, let's,
Yeah.
we're still in session, so,
Alright.
so,
So we'll keep the same.
yep. And then we have our school board work session on June 24th at
Follow me.
6:30. All right, any other questions, member updates?
Can I, sorry, can I actually go back to the 17th? Just because, Paul, is that when we would do your,
That's in the work session at the last.
so that's the
That's when Brady's
24th?
out.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Perfect.
All right, member updates. Jessica, do you want to go?
I attended Masiko, negotiations and, let me see here, and meeting. That was my first experience with negotiations. And it was an interesting situation. It was a wonderful learning experience with a fellow board member with a lot of experience. And then just a regular Masiko board meeting. Lots of concerts, school events, jazz band concert. Really cool to see the dedication from our kids in middle school through high school to jazz music. Very, very fun to listen to them, and they're pretty amazing. Going to the band concert and choir concert last week to hear how successful our students are in music is pretty incredible. Our choirs, it was not announced, but the choirs, all of them received superior rating at contest,
Nice.
which is pretty incredible, and kudos to Miriam Augsburger for coming in this year as a new choir director and accomplishing that with her students. So just really impressed with our music program here as they continue to strive to get better and better every year. So.
Met with Cher last week about budget conversation or presentation. Thank you again. Same day, middle school career fair. Got to hold down the corner of the gym with a big business banner and teach the kids how to code in Java a little bit. And then had some other, some of my developers were in the classroom doing breakout sessions. So kind of fun, gave out stuff. Subjected Amy to my officiating prowess.
My gosh.
Dan was very short pumps and he called me on call, so I did several softball and baseball games this last month. Did some ad hoc master schedule training with the high school staff so they can use their tools better. And worked with John on some other technology things dealing with work, so.
Very cool.
Negotiations.
And we had principal negotiations, that's right. We had a meeting last Friday that we were all late to, except for Kevin probably.
I was on time.
Awesome. Like 3:03.
So I met with Jessica and Amy, and we looked at with Paul the Star Awards and the Bay Awards, so that was nice. Yeah. And just side note, Bobby came to one of the trainings that we had at the youth, so it was nice to have her come to me.
That's awesome.
Cool. Some of the other stuff, negotiations, planning this piece. The glimpse that was fun to be part and see was all the stuff that goes on to make prom happen. It was pretty interesting, the inside, like behind the scenes, and so that was pretty cool. And they had it here on site, which was a neat thing, and I think students enjoyed it, and so that was a lot of fun. One of the things that I flat out, and people can hear me say it too, is I haven't done a great job at being part of our chamber as much as I should be. And so that's something that I haven't had a presence, which I knew would be a little bit of a concern, and has been more than I wanted it to. So that's one of the things is I know Paul's there all the time, but I haven't been there as much as I would like. It's because I stopped feeding lunch. I know you wanted to say it, but
I made you a promise. Remember? I did make you that promise.
Sorry about you, what happened?
I did. Let's see. Just kind of things to note. Attended to the AMSD Board of Directors earlier in May. It's just always nice to get a legislative update as to kind of where things are at and all of those sort of things. Northwest Suburban, we met on the 15th. I think just, again, that is such an important collaborative for us to be a part of in so many different ways. And I think and that's why I had asked Matthew, who was still here during the update, just to make sure that, all of the districts that have the current grant that was awarded somewhat late in the process, there's quite a bit left from a budget perspective to spend down. Some of that's just because training hasn't hit and all of those sort of things. So our executive director through Northwest Suburban is working very closely with all of the district sites just to either make sure that it's spent down or work with the federal government to get some exceptions just because of timing of when the grant was awarded. She feels really confident though, and is with everybody's plans and all of those sort of things. So that's always nice to hear. I'm super excited that she and the team are coming here this week to connect in. And then I think other things have been mentioned. Similarly, I went to prom, and that was really cool to see the kids dressed up. And I actually had never attended in the past; it never worked out. And so to go and see all of the heart and soul of the parents that put into the decorations in the gym, and all of the community that shows up and is present for it is pretty fun, pretty neat to see. Yeah, and I think there's one student that I don't know how many different people he escorted down the walkway, and that was fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, and then spend some time with Paul for agenda preps and things like that, and staff awards. So it's kind of been a busy few weeks. Brady.
Went to the Jazz MN performance. That was awesome. Went to a honor band performance for second-year band students for selected students in Monticello. I got to go because a particular individual of my family was one of the members invited.
Nice.
Attended the Screenagers filming. Went to the Arts and Academics at middle school. I've been monitoring the legislative movement very closely over the last few weeks, tweeting at our legislative leaders regularly in a positive way. So, met with the Community Education Advisory Council on 4/18. Got some new equipment going in. It's awesome. I think it's probably already there. I haven't been there in a while. They're getting moving with the building supervisor that was approved at a previous meeting. ECFE gave an update. They're continuing to do amazing work. They were awarded a Pathway to Scholarship for maintaining a 4-star rating. I can't quite remember what that means, but it's awesome. Couple of policy updates. Galaxy, still busy, 170 kids enrolled. And things are going. They gave an update on a few key dates that they had there for some validations and assessments that are going to be happening within the Galaxy program, as well as they're doing a food drive for Crow River Thousand Hearts. So a lot of good things going on there.
Nice. Can I add, just for record?
All right.
I couldn't find my list on my phone because I try to keep it all on there. I couldn't find it. So yes, negotiations, principal negotiations, and also the awards last week. So
great, Paul.
And most of them you've already said, but Thousand Hearts Crow River was a big day. Got a little bit rained out, but we had a great program here, and I think it was a good for the community, good for the schools, good for people.
Did it get rained out last year as well?
Yeah.
yes, almost.
I think it did. Yeah.
But the work still got done.
Yeah.
It was spread out over a couple
Yeah,
of
2
years.
years ago. Was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Last year was awesome.
That's okay.
So you need to adjourn the regular meeting and then.
Oh, we gotta sign recognition.
Yep.
And then we'll adjourn, and we'll take a break, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, because we got.
So assign recognition.
I'll do the band.
You got all
Chase,
band?
my friend Chase and Joe.
Thank you.
Chase and Joe gets one each.
Thank you, thank you. And then we've got Reams Writer.
I can do that.
Thank you, Beth. We have DECA, 3 individuals that made it to Orlando.
I would rather not do DECA simply because it's all my daughter's age group and they hear from me all the time. So
Well, I can switch with you if you'd like.
let's see if someone else.
Okay.
That's what you were looking for. How can I get out of this?
I'll do track.
Well, oh, okay, are you gonna just
Unless
do
you
one
wanna
track?
do it.
No, and then but I was thinking for track.
There's like 150 of them.
I'll do it in July.
Can we do our?
What do you think about the certificates for the?
They
It'll
should
take
get a
me some time.
certificate,
No, I
yeah.
know, and I'm just asking your opinion. Like, what do you think?
Well, I think
That'd be cool.
Dan hates me, that's what I think. It's like, oh, he just looking. I don't know, it's gonna take some time.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the things that you could say is that,
What do you think? I think
well,
it's
since they
awesome.
have clerical support in the activities office, that you could, if there's any activities, athletic or events, that you could send the certificates out from the activities office rather
Right.
than having it be sent out from Kathy.
That's a good idea.
Great. I just think that's such a
It's
cool
nice to
achievement.
recognize them, but
Yeah, and so maybe
Saying it's not.
the team could do it. But anyway,
it's called
so
delegated.
you'll write the one, you'll
To
write
the
the
team.
one to the team,
Yep.
and then you'll figure out how best to get the certificates out to the people, whether it's you or through
Stacy has time to do it at the end of the
cool.
school year.
Cool, thank you, thank you. That's great. And then we got DECA left.
Just through the Deborah.
Just 3.
What, Kaylee?
Kaylee, Molly, and Jesse. They all made it to Orlando.
Awesome, I can take DECA.
Is that all of them?
Kaylee's the president of DECA, so she's in the
Special
process.
recognition.
She's in the process of interviewing her officer positions for DECA.
So should I title this one El Presidente?
There you go. See, that's what I would. That's what.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, at this point in time, I would take a motion to adjourn the regular session of this board meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Sorry.
Yep.
I will second that motion.
Second, third.
And we'll be taking, let's say, a 10-minute recess.
Perfect.
Reconvening near or around 10:15 in closed session.
Okay.
All right.
All
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
These are gonna go
Kathy,
fast.
I don't know how to turn that on.